is in. Captain's Cast begins now. Welcome. Permission to come aboard. Granted, crew. Embark, for we have much to discuss. And a super chat right off the bat. Fu Man Blue says, permission to come aboard. It is granted, sir, for $2. Thank you. I have to admit, that was pretty humbling. I'm pretty honored. To get a super chat before I've even said anything, you do me great honor, sir. I did notice it looks like we have kind of like a stream quality warning, so please let me know in the chat if there's any issues with the stream quality. I am hoping it will resolve, because I have not been messing with any of the settings. But in the meantime, let us convene. I am Captain Garrett of the channel Swords and Starships. This is the Captain's Cast. Weekly live stream every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And we are here to discuss all of the happenings in entertainment culture, specifically culture that interests me. Fu Man Blue says, sounds looks good. Thank you. That excellent. Fu Man Blue is posted at the forecastle. He's in the lookout. I'm posting Fu Man Blue up in the cross trees. He is the lookout for quality. So welcome aboard all. Yes, it has been quite an interesting half year, hasn't it? Happy Father's Day, everybody. Make sure to wish the captain in your life a happy Father's Day. Sip of coffee for the working man. Hail the 199. Ah, yes. Captain Janeway beat the Borg with coffee, and your captain will beat the woke with coffee. Let me guarantee it. So, a couple of things in the stack of stuff. I have seen The Flash. I have not seen what anyone else thinks about The Flash, except by accident when I was going through someone else's stream and they mentioned something. I did hear some no-spoiler reviews from Gary, so hail Nerdrotic. I heard some no-spoiler stuff on that, but not much. I did hear some of Chris Gore. Okay, fine. I've heard everyone's reviews. I know whatever. No, I'm just kidding. So I watched The Flash. I have not seen a lot of the reactions, so I'm going to give you a fresh take, my thoughts on it. And I went to see it with a normie, which was immensely helpful, I have to admit, because I got a lot of insight. Into this movie. And are you ready to have an explanation for how the Force came to be from Disney Star Wars? Is that like the thing you've most wanted as a Star Wars fan all your life? Is a Star Wars prequel that is going to tell the origin. It's not enough to have a prequel. It's not enough to redo all of the lore. It's not enough to, appropriate the name Skywalker for your Mary Sue character. No, we're going to tell the origin of the Force. More on that in just a minute. And it will be a no-spoiler review for The Flash, and believe me, I am resisting temptation in the worst way. And then after that, we are going to talk about your captain's top 5 best films of the year so far, /TV series, and top 5 worst films of the year, /TV series. Because I just feel we need to take a step back and just see where we've been so far. Actually, this film, The Flash, is what gave me kind of that feeling of like, I think it's time for a top 5 best and worst. What do you think? So we'll get into that. And the spoiler moratorium on Transformers: Rise of the Beasts and Into the Spiderverse is hereby lifted by decree of the captain. And so if I have thoughts on that, you have been warned. As Judge Dredd would say, you have been warned. So let's get into it. I'm just, right off the bat, though, I hat tip bounding into comics, I just had to share with you this article. there I was, minding my own business, and I come across this gem. James Mangold of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny fame he has something he wants to tell you. James Mangold wants to show you the 10 commandments, or as he wants to create the 10 commandments of the Force. Are you excited about this? The 10 commandments of the Force. How long would it take us to unpack all the things wrong with that? But let me get into it. Director James Mangold recently provided new details on his recently announced Star Wars film, claiming he wants to create the 10 commandments of the Force. Look at that. That is a man at the top of his game right there. He's just created the greatest Indiana Jones film of all time, specifically because it is the greatest Phoebe Waller-Bridge Indiana Jones film of all time. And hot off that success, is the movie out? Has the movie come out? Never mind. So hot off all that success, especially at the Cannes Film Festival, Mangold was announced as the director of an upcoming Star Wars film at Star Wars Celebration, in which the film will take audiences deep into the past, telling the tale of the first Jedi to wield the Force and harness it as a liberating power in an era of chaos and oppression. How much you want to bet that this era of chaos and oppression will be a very topical, thinly veiled reference to a certain orange politician of recent fame? Now, in a new interview with Gizmodo, Mangold revealed more details about what his plans are for the film. First, he detailed he had been in talks with Lucasfilm in the past, but their focus had been on continuing where Lucas left off in Return of the Jedi, etc., etc. And Mangold said, well, I've talked to Lucasfilm before and even worked a bit before on other projects, and I'm always interested in what's going on there and have friends who work on other Star Wars projects. But I understand that much of what they're doing was kind of continuing the saga forward. So when I mentioned to Kathy, oh dear old Kathy, the idea that I had about going backward, really far backward, I was surprised that it excited her and the other wonderful people she works with at Lucasfilm. Well, your captain is not surprised, and I'll explain in a moment. For me, it's about I want to be part of the saga, but I also don't want to be holding so much lore in the air that you can hardly tell the story. And what I really wanted to do, what I told her, was just, can we make a kind of 10 commandments of the Force, a kind of origin story of how the Force came to be known, understood, wielded, and harnessed. Now, as I read this, I realize that I don't think he's referring to actually writing a 10 Commandments doctrine. I think what he means is he wants it to be this sort of mega, spectacle film like the 10 Commandments film. And just make it like Breaking Bad. Make it a Walter White story in space. That's really good. While Mangold provided details on what he hopes to create through the film, Gizmodo noted that when he was asked about the status of the film, they keep announcing all these Star Wars films that they never make. Isn't that? Did you notice that? It's like, that is like, I'm trying to find, there's an analogy to this in the business world. It's, you know what it's like? It's like NFTs. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to make billions. South Park had the joke, I'm going to make billions and billions of theoretical dollars in NFTs. It's like getting a Star Wars sequel deal is the new, in the Hollywood world, is the NFTs of the Hollywood world, because it basically means you theoretically are the director of a really successful project very soon. While Mangold provided details, it's impossible to answer that question. Fandango's Eric Davis. I appreciate all the great hat tips in here, but I want to get to the meat and potatoes here. Oh yeah, here we are. Along with Mangold's film, Lucasfilm announced 2 other films that are expected to get theatrical releases. The first appears to be titled New Jedi Order and sees the return of Daisy Ridley as Rey Palpatine. I mean Skywalker. The film is supposed to be directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, who is just going to direct the most excellent Star Wars film of all time, Women Empowerment. The press release detailed the movie will be set 15 years after the last events of the Skywalker saga. Who cares? It will also tell the story of rebuilding the new Jedi. Something about rebuilding the new Jedi Order. Kennedy provided more details during an announcement on Entertainment Weekly's Dagobah Dispatch podcast, where she relayed, well, as we move into the future space, which this story is set about 15 years outside of the rise of Skywalker. Now, obviously, we realize that post-war, post-First Order, Rise of the New Jedi Order, we left Episode 9 with Rey making a commitment to Luke Skywalker that she would rebuild the Jedi Order. And so here we are. We are ready to do that. And it took a lot of discussion because obviously we have been developing stories in different spaces, and television has been a big focus of our attention right now. Oh, I bet it has. Have you had a successful television release yet? Ever? Like what? The Mandalorian was great for like 2 seasons. And you actually kind of ended The Mandalorian successfully at the end of season 2. And if you just quit while you were ahead, you could have said you had one success. But no, big dumb crocodile fight was on tap. But there's still so much. This is my favorite line of the whole article, by the way. But there's still so much interest in what happens after Rise of Skywalker. So we are excited to be doing that right now. The press release stated Dave Filoni will orchestrate the escalating war between the Imperial Remnant and the fledgling New Republic. Alongside producer Jon Favreau, they will bring together many of the threads of the Star Wars original series in a cinematic event. Can I just pause here for a second? This is what annoys me. It brings me no delight to tell you how shitty The Mandalorian Season 3 is, to tell you how poorly paced Andor was, or to tell you that, Disney Star Wars is Disney in general. It's remarkable how committed this company is to failure. I've never seen anything like it. They are going down with the ship they are the band on the Titanic, man. They are playing right down to the end. And it gives me no pleasure to report this to you because I quite liked Admiral Thrawn, who I know is taken from the extended universe. It was really the novels that made Admiral Thrawn a spectacular character. But then Filoni extrapolated that into a version of the character in Star Wars Rebels, a sometimes good show, a show that could have almost had greatness once in a while, but it was just too much of a cartoon. But there were episodes where Thrawn was pretty damn good. There were episodes where the Inquisitors were pretty damn good. So I see a picture like this, and you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of how can I best demonstrate this? You know what? It reminds me of American Horror Story promotional trailer posters, AHS poster. Like, I'll just give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I love the posters and the marketing for American Horror Story. It's some of the most brilliant marketing. Oh yes, Hotel is perfect. That's the perfect example. I don't know if you're an American Horror Story fan. I'm like half of a fan. They have like every other season is pretty good. Yeah, like there you go. Here's American Horror Story Hotel, right? Horrifying, scary. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you. But anyway, horrifying, scary images, right? Then what happens? You go watch the show, and it's about it's about 55% that scary. It's like there's maybe 3 or 4 moments in the series that are really a little bit creepy. They give you that spine-tingling feeling. The rest of the show is kind of just a melodrama with some horror elements spiced through it. You never see anything approaching that level of marketing. That is what all of this all the new Star Trek marketing, all the new Star Wars marketing, all of it makes me think of that, because here I see this this image of Admiral Thrawn, and I start to get excited because it's the lizard brain, right? The lizard brain in me is like, oh, that sounds cool, but I know that it's going to be crap. I know that it's going to be garbage because they have lost the plot completely in Star Wars. I can't believe, frankly, that Filoni and Favreau were capable of such a disaster on the level that is Mandalorian Season 3. That genuinely stunned me. Now, I understand why, because they no longer are working within a system where actual creativity is possible. Also, I think it may be that their talents are slightly overrated, which is not, you know what I mean? Erigmar in the chat, welcome aboard, Erigmar. How are you? Good to see you. Hail the Iron Age. Yes, indeed. Yes, welcome aboard. Fuman Blue says, what's with this heart over chat, and how do we get rid of it? I don't know. Your captain has... How do I get rid of it? Did I Oops, I just added one. I just added a heart to the chat. Damn it. This is... Okay, I gotta research this issue. I don't know where this is coming from. I swear, I'm not putting a heart on the chat. Although I do love you. I love you, chat. Your captain loves you dearly. But in a as the captain loves all of his crew. I will figure out what that is. If someone can research for me, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out what the heart is all about. We'll fix that on the next stream. But in the meantime, let us continue. So, it's highly likely the film will feature Grand Admiral Thrawn, given Filoni informed Empire Magazine in May he believes Thrawn is the big bad of the New Republic era. Who cares? Why should I care? This is why even Andor, which had moments of greatness, I can only invest so much energy in it because it's so pointless. Who cares how the Empire rose? Who cares how the New Order rose? Because I know all roads lead to the Emperor is back. Rey Skywalker brings about 50 people back from the dead with the Force, and we just that one image of 15,000 destroyers that are just magicked into existence. It just ruins all of it for me. It ruins every bit of tension in the Star Wars universe if that is where we're going, which is why I just generally separate Disney Star Wars from... It's like, why should I care that Thrawn is the big bad of anything? All right, enough of that. My point is, are you excited to see the origin of the Star Wars universe as told by Disney Star Wars? Can you imagine? Can you just imagine the damage they'll if they make this thing, the damage it's going to do? You think midichlorians were bad? Oh my God. Once they get a hold of the origin of the Force, the hubris of these people, it's unreal to me. It's like, yeah, it would be one thing if you said, okay, let's do an old Republic movie, 2,000 years in the past, armies of Jedi versus armies of Sith, Mandalore in its glory, if that could even be made interesting at this point, give it a shot, I guess. This is the way. And we could at least say that would be kind of fun to explore the ancient history of the Star Wars universe. But no, that's not enough for these greedy bastards. They're like, no, we're going to go back and we're going to tell the very first Jedi. Let's place bets, shall we? What are the odds that the first Jedi is female and checks at least one or two additional identity boxes? What do you reckon? What would you bet? I would not take that bet. It is definitely going to be the first Jedi is going to be a girl boss. I could just or like some old dude that's going to be quickly broomed out of the way for the girl boss. That's pretty much exactly what is going to happen if that movie happens, which, theoretically it's going to happen. Who knows? All right. Well, let's talk about The Flash. What did so? I said in the description that I'm shocked. I am shocked to report to you something kind of interesting about this movie. It's not the worst movie I've seen all year, and I'm kind of surprised. It's not even the most excruciating superhero movie I've seen all year, which is like wow, wow. So here's my one line review of The Flash. I feel like there's the weird thing is I keep thinking there's got to be like some kind of subtitle because there's always the subtitles now, but no, I guess it's just The Flash. It's just the one Flash. The Flash. My one line review of this film is it is a really super entertaining Batman film. When it's a Batman film, it is a super awful nails on the chalkboard cringe Flash film. Let me tell. I When I was a kid in the '80s, there was a really dopey, cheesy, low budget TV series that came out. It was a live action TV series, and it was about the Flash, and it told the story in the very traditional way. It was a man, not a boy, a man working at a laboratory with a job because men have jobs and they have professions and they have responsibilities. And so a man who is a professional scientist with a job is at a laboratory and he gets struck by lightning and he gets the Flash abilities. And he has to figure out how to use these abilities. And, there was a villain of the week he had to beat. And my dad and I watched it. I remember, and I liked it. I loved it, actually. I loved that show. And then I started reading some of the comic books because I really liked the character. And I just think about that version of Barry Allen in that cheesy 80s TV show, or maybe it was early 90s, maybe, like late 80s, early 90s. I think about that character, and then I compare it with this portrayal of Ezra Miller. And I would have no interest in this character. If this were the origin of this character, I could never be interested in this character. Ezra Miller, you know what he's like? He is like a Starbucks barista who has been cast for some inexplicable reason in a freaking movie at a big budget. No disrespect, okay? No disrespect to Star Wars baristas. I'm just saying he strikes me. That's a bit unfair. I'm sure there's some good. Anyway, he's been cast in this role. He acts like a child. He's like a boy in every scene. And to me, the most endearing he gets in this entire film is when he's chastising his other younger, dumber self for how annoying and obnoxious he is. And I'm not being glib. I'm serious. I actually start to kind of like his character a little bit in that moment. Why? Because it shows some growth, like maybe he's learning that that running around and being an annoying little brat all the time is not cool, and he's growing a little. So on that level, that was the most I started to like his character, is when he just gives his younger self the business. Michael Keaton's action scenes in this film are excellent. Every one of them. Now, you have to forgive the real problem that runs through this whole movie, and it is the CGI. The CGI in this film is a joke. It is, it's one thing to have bad CGI. This is the worst I've seen in a superhero film in 20 years. And I mean that because let me show you one of the worst CGI sequences that I actually loved. I loved this scene a lot in the film when I saw it. This is 20 years ago, right? This is a 20-year-old action scene. Let me see if I can find it for you. I don't want to spoil. I guess it's not really something I need to. Okay. Here we go. I'll probably I can only play a little bit. There it is. The Burly Brawl. Let me show you the part I'm talking about. Do you remember this?
Fine. Purple.
You know, he's fighting like 1,000 Smiths. And they look so silly. And then they animate Neo.
Yes.
It's not the whole scene, unfortunately. This is actually the good part of it. Yeah, it's like Neo starts... Those parts are good. All right, anyway, it's enough of that. You get my point, though. They animate Neo as a fully CGI character, and it's not convincing at all. And it's the worst part of that whole sequence. Everything up to that point was pretty good. Now, that poor quality CGI is exactly how all of the CGI is in this film. Nothing looks real. Everything is an uncanny valley. The cameos of, like, you may have heard, there are some multiverse cameos from other versions of Superman, other versions of other characters, and they look fake. They don't look real at all. Garrett over at Nerdrotic says it's an animated movie. Honestly, it's actually worse. It's actually worse than that because on the one hand, you don't have the sort of charm and like vibrant, color and life of like a Pixar animated film, or at least an old school Pixar animated film. But neither do you have like a sense of reality. There is a sequence in this film in Act 1 that is one of the most awful, weird, creepy, bizarre, unsettling things I have ever seen in a superhero film, and that's up against Ant-Man Quantumania, by the way. And it is this scene in which a bunch of... How can I even describe this? It's like basically a hospital is about to collapse. And of course, the one room that is not evacuated is the infant... what the hell do you call it? The infant nursery, the newborn nursery, right? And all these newborns are all in their little cribs. Yeah, they're all they're all squealing, And there's a nurse, and she's screaming like a B horror film actress, like full blown screaming at the top of her lungs, and every second it's overacting at its worst. It's just awful. And they all go falling out the windows, and they're falling, and the Flash has to save them all. He even says it in the movie as a line, and it's supposed to be a punchline. It's a baby shower. Oh my God. I can't even... They have animated infant babies falling in slow motion through space, and lest we forget to gild the lily, we have to have a service dog. A service dog is tumbling through the air. The dog is completely animated, but not in a cute Pixar way, and not in a convincing reality way. It is the fakest looking thing you've ever seen, and you're supposed to be invested in this. You're supposed to feel like, oh, don't let the babies die. I'm like, there's a moment in which to protect one of the infants, one of the babies, from being, hit with fire, because there is some kind of ignited flammable like oxygen tank or something, and it's spewing fire. This is all in slow motion, by the way, because he's the Flash and he's moving through and he's like trying to save them all. So there is a microwave. A microwave is falling from the building, and of course it is detached from any wall outlet, so we can safely disregard any possibility the microwave could be activated. But nevertheless, in order to protect the baby from the fire, he puts the baby in the microwave and closes it. It is one of the most horrifying, off-putting, disturbing, creepy, weird things I've ever seen. I was crawling in my chair. I'm thinking to myself, what fucking moron thought that this was a great image for a superhero film? It's like, that would deserve an F-bomb for me. What fucking idiot in that writer's room thought that was a great image? It's gross. It's disturbing in the extreme. It's maybe the most disturbing thing I've seen in any superhero film ever. And that's saying something up against, do you have holes? From Quantum Mania. My God. And this is the second time I've seen a scene with this character like this. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, there's another scene like this where there's a girl who's like dying in slow motion because she's about to get hit by a car and she's about to be killed. She's in her car, she's about to be killed in a collision, and time slows down into bullet time, and the Flash is going to save her, but he takes his sweet time, and they play a romantic song on the soundtrack because he's just ogling her in this very voyeuristic way while her life is literally hanging in the balance. And he's like, no, I'm just going to savor this for a while. And it's supposed to be romantic. It's supposed to be like, oh, anyway, that scene is so awful. It's the worst scene in the whole movie. And it's right in the beginning, and it does this character no favors because it's supposed to be his save the cat moment, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If you don't know, a save the cat moment is a moment in a film which every protagonist must have in order for you to become invested in them, which is a moment. Sorry, I might fix my chair. Captain's chair. Posturpedic support is important for a captain. Now, the save the cat moment endears you to the character and makes you invested in them and makes you like them. And that's what this is supposed to be for this Flash character, and it's not. It's awful. And Ezra Miller is, he's so unlikable. Like, just putting aside what a absolute wacko he is in real life, just putting that aside for a moment, and the fact he deserves to be in jail. This actor deserves to be in freaking jail for what he's done. But let's just put that to one side. Just pretend he was a model citizen in real life. He's still off-putting. His performance is anemic. It's hyperactive. At one moment it's anemic, another moment it's hyperactive. He's unlikable. He goes around. His younger self is awful. Just every moment he's not helpful. He's an idiot. He acts like a pothead. He's not smoking, but he acts like one. He acts like he's high all the time. I think they do reference that he smokes weed. So that's fit. Yeah. So he's basically acting like a pothead the whole movie. Totally high, giggling at everything, doesn't take anything seriously, like stupid as hell. Like his younger self is not just, immature. He's stupid. Like he doesn't understand, like, the gravity of anything at any moment in the movie until like towards the very end. And the movie seems to think that this is endearing. The movie seems to think that this is funny and that you're going to like it because, oh, wouldn't it be funny if your younger, more immature self was annoying you? It's like, well, it might be funny and there are a couple laugh lines in the movie, but I don't like this character. He's obnoxious. There's nothing about him that the younger version anyway, there's nothing about him that endears me to him. And the things about the older version of the Flash, Barry Allen, that I sometimes like. There are good moments with his mother, good moments with his father. There's the moment where he dresses down his younger self for being such an idiot, which is pretty good. And he often is moving the plot forward, wanting to heroically save people and wanting to live up to the ideals of the Justice League and the Ben Affleck Batman, who has become his mentor. And those are the moments that are kind of charming and make you start to like him a little bit. And then he opens his fat mouth and ruins it all. And so I never quite, and also even when he's being kind of nice, like just, he's so soy. The guy is so, he's just like, we've got to do something. We've got to save the day. And I'm just like, you're not a man. You're a man-child. It's annoying. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of these rail-thin, submissive, weak little man-children running around being, it's whatever happened to the days when Barry Allen was a man in a lab with a job. He had a job, okay? That's what I want. Oh, my goodness. Eric Mars says, best Flash show, which was... Yeah, don't start hugging us, Cap. Fu Man Blue says, never. That would be inappropriate. Inappropriate relationship between the captain and the crew. There will be no hugging on this vessel. Eric Marr says, best Flash show. And you must be referring to, the old show or the newer one on the CW? Because I hear good things about the new one on the CW. It was a little not my thing, but yeah. So now let's move on. First hour of the movie is, it's not, the story is not terrible. It could almost work. It just goes on too long. Finally, when we get to, he changes the past, and then you've probably heard this if you've been making the rounds. One of the plot points of the film, small spoiler alert, right? The film is about, he goes back in time to prevent the death of his mother in the first act, and this results in a breakage in, we get alternate timelines, we get alternate realities, and it results in a new timeline in which Zod comes to Earth and there's no Superman to stop him. Now, I will say that this idea is actually pretty brilliant and pretty interesting, because Chris Gore made this point, Hat Tip Film Threat, by the way. He made this point that it really kind of rehabilitates the Man of Steel ending. Problem is, who cares? I mean, like, at this point, why relitigate the past? But a lot of the complaints of the end of Man of Steel is that it is just this bloodbath for civilians. It's like you just watch Metropolis get freaking leveled for about an hour. And you're thinking to yourself, this isn't the Superman I remember, who's saving falling cats and things like that. But in the context of this film, when you see what happens when Zod arrives and there's no Superman, it is ghastly. Let me just tell you, it is grisly. It ain't pretty. And it's dismal. And I have to admit, look, I'm tired of dystopia. I am tired of grimdark. I'm tired of it, right? But if there is to be something in this film that entertains me, that is at least an entertaining idea. It's like, it's a what-if story. Do you know what this movie is? It's a freaking what-if story. That's what it is. What if Superman wasn't there to stop Zod? Well, that's a pretty interesting what-if story. Now, is that a satisfying movie? Well, I submit to you that it is not. Because it's a pretty dismal film, if I can be quite honest with you. I'm not going to exactly go into what the ending is, so I will leave that out of my comments. But what I will say is the one part of this film I quite enjoy is Michael Keaton Batman being persuaded to don the cowl once again, and sort of, without giving away too much, I will just say that this is, I know, this is a old, retired Batman who is a little bit bitter and jaded, but he's not a loser, though. That's kind of one thing I find interesting about it. It's more like he's a guy who's very successful because he cleaned up Gotham, and now Gotham is the safest city in the world, and there's nothing for Batman to do. And so now he just has all this free time on his hands. And what I like about that is that it kind of suggests that he's actually a victim of his own success. He's a victim of being so successful as Batman that now what does he do, right? And that's a pretty interesting angle. And there's a really tantalizing journey for his character in this film, and I quite liked it. Just if you separate out Michael Keaton's Batman and his story arc from the beginning to the end of the film, it's pretty great. It's pretty great, and I really liked that as a Michael Keaton Batman story. I thought that was pretty good. I wouldn't want it to be canon for reasons I will not go into here. I'm just thinking about what I can say about this that won't spoil things. Kara, who is it Kara Zor-El? Is that her name? That is Superman's cousin. I think that's it, right? I always forget. Kara Zor-El. Yeah, I think that's the name. Yep. Okay. She's pretty good in the film. Well, she's hot anyway. I'll just say that she's a babe, super babe, and I still would have preferred the skirt, but we can't have everything we want these days. That being said, she's played as a heroic character. I like she's a little bit different than Clark. She's a little bit darker than he is, but she's still a Kryptonian, and Kryptonians are in this portrayal, I think, well, in their lore, they're very enlightened people. And so I like the fact that she's portrayed as a bit grimmer, but she's still just as enlightened as any other Kryptonian that's not a Zod follower, that is. And the problem is, there's nothing particularly special about the actress who plays her. There's nothing about her that really just jumps off the screen. There's nothing about her character that, you know what you don't feel with her performance in this movie? You don't feel that you need to see like a Supergirl film now. Like, you don't leave the theater thinking, wow, she was remember how Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman shows up and she just took over the film. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman shows up, she takes over the whole thing and everyone loved her, right? She was also kind of just an oasis in the desert because it was so grim and so dark that just to see someone that was kind of bright and optimistic and upbeat, that was just so awesome that everyone loved Wonder Woman. But you could just tell right off the bat, she had a magnetic, charming quality. This actress who plays Kara Zor-El has none of that in this movie. She's more like a model who looks the part, but roughly. I don't know. What is Supergirl supposed to look like? I remember her being a blonde, and she looks like she could be a cousin of Clark. Let's just put it that way. Looking for the name of the actress. I'll find it for you. Anyway, to Ezra Miller's, the funny part of it is, in the first act of the film, I thought maybe it's a bit overstated at what everyone's saying about Ezra Miller. And then, like, the second and third act of the film kicked in, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't take another minute of this dweeb. I just can't. He's so annoying. So, but what are my actual overall thoughts? Well, I will say it is a pretty entertaining Batman movie nested within a pretty bland and forgettable and at times incredibly annoying Flash movie wrapped inside of a grim, rather pointless story. So it's a mixed bag for me. Look, it's probably one of the more entertaining experiences I've had in the theater this year because of Michael Keaton's Batman. And that's about all I could say for it, because the rest of it is such a mess that, well, the plot basically works. But the problem with the plot is it's miserable. It's just such a miserable story. It's not inspiring. It's not uplifting. And let me tell you why. Because Barry Allen, as portrayed by Ezra Miller, this iteration of the character is just, he cannot carry a story. He just can't. He's not interesting enough. He's not charismatic enough. He's not charismatic. He's not likable. He's annoying. He's grating. That he doesn't really have any of the magnetism that a Ben Affleck Batman or a Henry Cavill Superman or a Gal Gadot Wonder Woman has. He's just got none of that. So this film could not work without something like Batman being in it. Now, let me just give you one final thing. There is a scene in which Batman kicks into gear and he fights it's the scene where they have to break Kara Zor-El out of imprisonment in Russia. And let me just tell you, it is one of the greatest Batman action sequences I've ever seen. I freaking loved it. I absolutely loved it. I would watch that 3 more times and enjoy it. Now, the CGI is still bad, so that kind of sucks. The CGI is not great, but you kind of just don't care because you're like, I just want to see what Michael Keaton Batman would have looked like if they could have done him just going full tilt, just full tilt Max Batman action. And it's pretty glorious. And part of what makes it glorious is how not invincible he is. Like, that is actually one of my favorite elements of it. Like, he is one hell of a badass, and he just whips all of these Russian soldiers, but he is by no means invincible. And that is really well portrayed in the action sequences with his Batman. And I will also add that something about the maturity and the tactical knowledge of the character of Michael Keaton's Batman is incredibly refreshing, because you've been listening to these two Ezra Miller idiots the whole movie just blunder their way from one disaster to another, and you finally have a character who literally pulls their ass out of the fire. They're more powerful than he is, and yet his knowledge and experience makes him far more powerful than they are. It's really a great dynamic. So that is, but the problem is that it should have just been his movie. Then it should have just been Batman, returns, and just have it be Michael Keaton as Batman with guest star Ezra Miller Flash, which, you know what, actually delete that part and just make it Michael Keaton Batman, and I would have been fine with it. I would have been like, oh, cool movie. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So, what did I want to say about this? I feel like I had one more thing to say. Oh, yes. Oh, the normie take. Yes, lest I forget. I went to see this movie with a family member who is a total normie, right? And so she's watching it, and we're talking about it after the movie. She laughed at a couple of the jokes. She thought it was fine. Then we get out of the movie, and she starts talking about it, right? And I swear to God, there's one of the things she said. She's like, I just kept waiting for. I don't know how to describe it. I just kept waiting for. I don't know. And I said, what? What were you waiting for? She says, I was waiting for the movie to just get like something pretty good to happen. I started laughing. I was like, well, so you're saying you were just, it was a pretty good movie. You were just waiting. You just felt like you were waiting the whole time for something good to happen. She's like, well, yes. And we talked about the babies falling. Oh my God, that was so awful. And, so her questions were really interesting too, because she's like, well, there's just a lot I don't understand. And she's asking me because she's thinking, I'm a normie. I don't get this stuff. You probably get it. I don't. And she starts asking me questions about like the timelines and how that didn't make any sense. And then she said, I was just confused about a lot of the stuff going on. And I was like, what's confusing you is you don't know all the lore of all the Justice League stories. Like, you don't know, you haven't watched Justice League and Aquaman and Wonder Woman. You haven't watched all of these. So you're confused for that reason, which is reasonable. And then she said, like, well, just the CGI was awful. I just really couldn't follow any of the action. It was like, it was sensory overload. And I said, oh my God, that you're just be grateful I didn't take you to Quantum Mania, because it was that times 10. And she was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, trust me. You don't want to see that nightmare. And so just every observation she had about the film was dead on accurate. She says, and then, the guy that played the Flash, he's just, I don't know. He was really annoying me a lot of the time. And he seemed like kind of a jerk, just, I'm like, correct. I'm like, the normie take is exactly correct on this movie. It's like, animated CGI babies, awful. Baby in microwave, what the hell? Ezra Miller, why is he so annoying and unlikable? And the thing that struck me about her reaction too is that she had an almost kind of like sheepishness about it. She was like, I guess I just don't get this stuff. Like, in other words, she was doubting her take. She was doubting her conclusions about the film. And I'm saying, no, you're correct. The film is trying to trick you into not realizing what you realize, which is that that a lot of this is garbage. And then she said, like, well, the ending I didn't really understand. I didn't like any of the timeline stuff. Seeing all the other Supermen, what was that? And then she says, and it was also kind of depressing. And I'm like, yeah. And now this is a family member that's often mad at me when I don't like a movie. But she's describing all this. I guess I just felt unsettled. And this was the most interesting thing she said. She said, I felt anxious watching this movie. Like, I felt anxiety the whole time I'm watching it. And I said, that is exactly right. It's disconcerting watching all this fake, weird-looking CGI that's not convincing at all. It's odd. It's off-putting. and then add to that Ezra Miller is so damn unlikable and so annoying, and he's such an idiot all the time, and he's such a jerk all the time, and then add to that it has this grim, depressing ending, and it's like, is this even a superhero movie at this point? I mean, so I said, stop doubting yourself. You're right about this. And also, the next time you hear me bitching about a movie, just understand this is what I'm feeling. And she's like, oh, well, that's fair. That's fair. You deserve. So, yeah, that's a good point. So try this headline. From The Hollywood Reporter, box office results, Ezra Miller's The Flash, Pixar's Elemental. Oh, don't even get me started on that fever dream nightmare. Get iced in the openings. One bright spot of the weekend was Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, which secured the best per theater. Who cares? Such was the... If Chris Gore reviews it and likes it, I'll watch it. Otherwise, I don't care. Such was the refrain across Hollywood as opening weekend estimates circulated for DC's anticipated The Flash and Pixar's Elemental, starring Ezra Miller in the titular role. Warner Brothers and DC's The Flash. I just love any time I can frame anything as the titular role. The titular character. The titular role. That's my favorite. I'll use any excuse to use that phrase. So, your captain is a great fan of the titular role. Starring Ezra Miller in the titular role, anything but flashy. In the opinion of moviegoers, the film earned an estimated $55.1 million for 3 days and projected $64 million for 4 days, notably behind expectations. What were the expectations on this film? I want to say they said... Let's see, The Flash had hoped... Yeah, there it is. The Flash had hoped for a 3-day start of at least $70 million so as to come in ahead of such disappointing DC titles as Black Adam, which collected $67 million. Look at how low the bar has sunk. They're like, gee, that failure, Black Adam, did 67. If we could do 3 million more, we'd be super happy. We'd be really chill. It's like, oh my God, this is pathetic. This is pathetic. It's like... They should have just... never mind. Lest I forget, Michael Shannon, oh my God. I've never seen an actor so abused as he was in this film. I heard that Michael Shannon was in no way happy about just the experience of filming his lines for this movie. He's totally CGI the whole movie. He never takes off the suit. He is literally reading his lines. We must extract the codes, the genetic code of Krypton, so that we can terraform this world. You, Kara Zor-El, are the one I seek. It was sad. It was sad. You could just tell that poor Michael Shannon was like, well, I am going to read my contract next time. Oh my God, I can't do this shit anymore. It's like, I feel like the jig is kind of up. We went through sort of a golden era where a lot of really A-list celebrities, A-list actors, let's say, and I mean that in terms of their talent and their credibility as an actor, started doing all of these superhero roles. And, like Robert Redford playing the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., the secretary of S.H.I.E.L.D. in The Winter Soldier was freaking awesome because he brought this level of like this is a grounded spy thriller is what the movie feels like now. And, those days are going to be over because I just think a lot of these actors are starting to figure out, like, I don't want to spend all day staring at, green light bulbs in a volume and pretending that I'm actually acting. I think they're tired of it. This isn't going to happen anymore. So it ain't doing good, and, gee, I wonder why. This from Bounding Into Comics, The Flash director Andy Muschietti claims the film's terrible CGI was intentional. What? Meant to put audiences in the perspective of the Scarlet Speedster. Now, have you, my dear sailors and starnauts, ever heard a more pathetic excuse? Have you ever? Oh my God. It's unbelievable, the cope. This guy, okay, I thought Jeff Loveness was bad. Poor Jeff Loveness, the writer of Ant-Man Quantum. Well, I thought MODOK was cool. And I was really sad when people didn't like my movie. And then I realized, no, my movie's good. And it's like, this is even worse. He said, oh, well, this is like what a kid does, it's like when you call out a kid for something, they're like, oh, I meant to do that. That's what this is. This is the director of The Flash saying, everyone's like, the CGI is so bad, it's so awful, it's the worst I've ever seen. It's like it's a 25-year-old movie, and he's like, oh, I meant to do that. Yeah, no, that was intentional. That was deliberate. I meant to do that. That it went according to plan. Didn't you like it? Now, let me just quite seriously, Mr. Muschietti. How do you figure that fake, weird-looking CGI falling babies puts me in the perspective of The Flash? In what world is that representative of his experience of going at high speed? Sorry, I don't buy it. I'm trying to let me find his pull quote here. The Flash not only employs a similar technique to have Barry pop out of the Speed Force at various intervals throughout time, but they use it multiple times, each appearance looking worse than the last. So this article is excoriating the terrible CGI, which is true. Asked during a recent interview by IO9's Germain Lussier whether or not this awkward aesthetic was what had been envisioned for the Warner Brothers Discovery's big off the editor, Muschietti confirmed that yes, it in fact was. Why? The idea, of course, is we are in the perspective of the Flash, explained the director. Everything is distorted in terms of lights and textures. We enter this water world, if you will, which is basically being in Barry's POV. Now, it was part of the design, so if it looks a little weird to you, that was intended. BS! Like, BS, bro! That is such bullshit art. That is such a freaking excuse. I can't even. I'm climbing in my chair just thinking about how stupid this is. It took me out of the movie, sir. It was immersion breaking. So I'm sorry, I just don't buy this pathetic, anemic excuse that, oh yes, I meant to do that. Look, was it as bad as Quantum Mania? No, it wasn't, and we'll talk about that later in the stream. But I am so tired of CGI. I am so excited for Oppenheimer. I am so excited for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. You know why? Because these are movies that use practical effects. John Wick 4. There's CGI in John Wick for absolute sure, but the choreography is real. It's real people. It's real actors. Donnie Yen frickin' doing the blind man martial arts gun fu thing. That's him doing that, choreographing it. Like, it's real. It's something you can actually see. Tom Cruise doing the jump on the bike. Top Gun Maverick, the planes. They're actually in the cockpit. Like, I'm tired of these CGI explosions of just garbage everywhere. Daredevil Season 1 on Netflix. Well, honestly, all the seasons of Daredevil on Netflix were excellent. They were excellent because it was a guy in a suit kicking ass. That long take in the hallway in Season 1, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's all real people just doing badass martial arts in a hallway. It's freaking brilliant. It's amazing the story you can tell, and you don't need a drop of CGI to do it if you're clever and if you're creative. So, this is the problem. See, you know what CGI is? It is the crutch of lazy creators. It is the crutch of just corporate media production, because it requires, you can just whatever you need, you just spam CGI. And, CGI, when used properly, the way that James Cameron uses it, for example, in Avatar, It is used as a complement. It is used as a tool to fill in what you can't do with practical effects. It is used to smooth over and improve the practical effects. It is not used. Like, can I just show you something real quick? Can I just show you that, without getting a copyright claim, hopefully? I won't play the music. This is just something that has been bothering your captain quite a bit lately. And I may have mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. The purpose of CGI is to make possible in filmmaking what was not possible before. Meaning that what you can do without it, you should do. But if you can't do something without it, you should consider CGI as your alternative. You should consider CGI as a bridge to make it possible. This is what I'm talking about. I'll mute it too, because I don't want to get the copyright strike here. This is the trailer for this garbage Kurtzman track, Strange New Worlds, right? Let me just give you kind of the back half of this. There you go. Like, I look like right there. That's a great shot right there of what I'm talking about. Back it up just for a sec. Look how fake this looks. Look at how absolutely fake. This does not, you know what this looks like to me? This looks like those old Trapper Keeper binders you would get for school. And they had like, little just fake stock images of planets and stuff. That's what this looks like to me. Let me see if I can find another good one. Yeah, frankly, everything in Kurtzman Trek just looks plastic and saccharine, just devoid of any actual... Oh my God, I forgot. He's putting the stupid Lower Decks characters. God, I will give this to woke story creators. They're so good at this. They never miss it. Like, the minute they figure out that the fans have figured out some way of coping with their dreck, like, oh, well, in my head canon, Lower Decks is not part of the other Star Trek shows. Like, like some poor fool who still likes Discovery. Okay, don't, no disrespect to anybody. Like what you like, but some guy, some poor sap who still likes Discovery, but can reassure himself that, or they self, as the case may be, they can reassure themselves that the Lower Decks is not part of this other, show. Yeah, I like Strange New Worlds. He's finally doing it right with Strange New Worlds. I'm glad that Discovery, I can just in my head canon imagine the rest of the shows aren't part of... No. The woke will sniff that out. They are like a dog with a bone. They're like, oh, no. We are going to shoehorn in these stupid animated characters so that you know that they're part of the canon. You can't use that head canon crap, toxic fan. Ew, gross. Oh my God, I can't. It makes me so mad. I don't care about Strange New Worlds. Look at how junk this looks. Look how stupid this looks. I can't even... Oh, there's got to be a better image of it. Anyway, here's the deal, right? Why are we exploring Strange New Worlds? Like, here's a good one. Oh, yes. I don't look at this and think, wow, I'm seeing what space looks like. I'm seeing, the final frontier. I look at this and I think I'm seeing a CGI vomit is what I'm looking at. And, as much as I love Star Trek Picard Season 3, there were even moments of Season 3 of Picard where I felt the same way. It's like, this doesn't make me feel like I'm really in space at times. And I would take the old quality of Star Trek The Next Generation when you can just tell that it's a reused shot of the Enterprise orbiting this planet and it looks a little grainy. That is more inspiring and more interesting to me than all this visual gobbledygook. And so I'm tired of the CGI explosion, the CGI just bleh, all over the screen. Let's get rid of it. All right. So what did you think, dear chat? Have you seen The Flash? Did you like it? Have you heard about this? Have you heard about The Flash? my Jay Leno impression. Fu Man Blue says, so I guess Quicksilver not having the Speed Force to give him his abilities just looks cool. People in the volume look like the person... This stupid heart thing. Oh my god, I just accidentally hit the 100%. Damn it, I'm accidentally sending emojis. How do I remove this? Gotta figure that out. Dang it. YouTube changes things on me. YouTube, they changed something on me. People in the volume look like the person getting up in front of me at the theater. Fu Man Blue says. They really do. And like Michael Shannon gets the worst of it in this movie. I don't think they use... There's not even anything about him that's even a real shot in this movie. I don't even think his face is real. His face looks CGI. I think because I guess they de-aged him maybe? Like, why? He can't be that much older looking. So bizarre. Now, this all got me thinking because, I came out of the theater and my companion, the normie aforementioned, asked me, what did you think of the movie? Did you like it? And I said, it's not the worst Drek I've seen all year. It's like the best I can tell you. I would say it was about as entertaining as any superhero movie has been this whole year. And that was due to Michael Keaton's Batman. Like, I really enjoyed that. I actually think you could just, you could do one of those internet edit jobs where you just make it you just re-edit it so it's just the Michael Keaton Batman movie. And then I'd probably watch it a couple of times. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. I'll see that again. Just Ezra Miller, delete. Thank you. That would be helpful. So that got me thinking, right? What are the best and worst films I've seen this year? And so we're halfway through it, folks. We are halfway to another Christmas. Are you excited for Christmas? It's the most wonderful time of the year. I can't wait. I just can't. Anyway, we're halfway through the year, and it's time for a mid-year review. So the captain is going to give you his top 5 best movies of the year so far, / TV series, because I'm cheating, and his top 5 worst movies of the year / TV series, because I'm cheating. And there is one rule. I have to have actually seen it. And I will admit, I've actually not seen Thor: Love and Thunder. Well, okay, I watched 5 minutes of it, and I turned it off. I really did. I was like, I'm going to watch this for 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, it's as bad as Mahler said. It's so bad. And so I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. And but I actually think I am going to go back and watch them now for the benefit of this channel. And I have not watched Black Panther: Wakanda Forever because, literally, I swear, this is the only reason. The only reason... Well, obviously, the usual MCU reasons, but really, the main reason is I don't want to watch a funeral for Chadwick Boseman. I don't want to watch that. It's depressing. It's dismal. It's weird. It's a weird thing to do, to turn a whole movie into a funeral to a guy. It's disrespectful. I don't like that. That's why I didn't watch Wakanda Forever. I consider it disrespectful to the man. I really do. That's not me being, just a YouTuber wanting to opine. I'm serious. I really find it off-putting. And so I just was like, no. I'm not going to watch this, but I'll probably watch it for whatever. So I can review it. So that being said, I'm only going to comment on, I'm only going to pick the ones that I feel are the worst and the best that I have seen. And so without further ado, the Captain's Mid-Year Top 5 Best Films of the Year. Starting with number 5. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Now, can you believe this? I did a whole video on how bad this movie was going to be. I did a whole movie on how much I hate this trailer. I might have done 2 videos on it. No, I think I did just 1 video. I literally was text arguing with a friend of mine who's a D&D. He's actually a D&D GM. I guess you'd say DM for D&D. A dungeon master himself. He's done many games. I played his games. He loves Dungeons and Dragons, and he's all excited about this movie. And I'm like, that Old Spice commercial in which the little sorcerer dweeb is like using Old Spice, I'm out. Like, I'm not gonna. But then I go and see this movie, and I'm like, you know what? It was actually pretty not bad. It was actually Chris Pine's character. He is a fool triumphant with a heart of gold, but he just, he's kind of like a guy who can never get something going. He keeps making a mistake that gets in his way. And I find that kind of endearing and likable as a character. And he actually has a pretty good character journey. And Michelle Rodriguez is actually, I would say, a fairly convincing girl boss in this movie. But what's kind of interesting about it is she's not a Mary Sue, because she has no tactical planning. She is basically just a tank. She's just there as muscle, and that's really all she's good at in the movie. And she's kind of like glued to Chris Pine's character, because who else would hang out with her? It's basically just, that's what it is. And so they actually make a pretty good buddy story, him and her. Then you've got some other kind of interesting characters in here, which Hugh Grant plays this kind of slimy villain that works, and he plays to his strengths, which is he's got that kind of superficial, witty charm that can kind of go both ways. Sometimes it's oily and sometimes it's endearing. Anyway, the point is, this is one of the very few films, it's why it's in the top 5, sadly. This is one of the very few films I've watched this year. I enjoyed it. I walked out of the theater and I was like, that was fun. I was entertained. I didn't mind sitting there for 2 hours watching this. It kind of had a happy ending. I kind of liked it. It wasn't totally disrespectful to the lore. There wasn't like a bunch of woke BS in it. It was just kind of, how else can I put this? It was a thief heist movie set in the Dungeons and Dragons world. It's basically just that simple. It was basically a small scale adventure that kind of swerved. They just happened to run into the path of a villain with evil plans, and the CGI was not so over the top obnoxious that I hated it. There was definitely a fair bit of annoying CGI, but at least the action sequences were kind of fun to watch because there was an actual story. The characters had different strengths and weaknesses. There was kind of a purpose to the action scenes. The actual fight with the sorceress at the end is actually pretty good. I thought it would be one of the dumbest parts of the movie. It was kind of cool to see how they use magic in it. I'm going to say I still don't totally love magic action sequences in movies in general. It's just not my thing, but it wasn't terrible. Now, if I were going to write, or if I were going to say what is a great high fantasy film, this would not be it. This is nowhere near the level. Obviously, Lord of the Rings is in another stratosphere with comparison to this movie, but even just like a House of the Dragon kind of scale, it's just nowhere in that league for me, but it's fun. It's fun. So that is number 5. Number 4 of the best films of 2023. And that would be Tetris. Have you seen this movie? It's on Apple TV Plus. Now, I'm not recommending you go out and get an Apple TV Plus membership. Of all of the woke streaming services, Apple is probably the worst, I've got to tell you. There is so much woke shit on that Apple TV Plus, you wouldn't even believe it. Who is, maybe Netflix might be sort of neck and neck these days, but weirdly, there's a lot of surprisingly honest critiques of, there's just some surprisingly honest films that slip through the cracks on this service. Silo is not terrible. Silo's a pretty good show. Anyway, I stumbled upon Tetris. Chris Gore recommended this movie. It is the true story of the guy. He's played by Taron Egerton, who is just great in this role. He's a great actor. Keep your eye on Taron Egerton. I'm telling you, this guy has some real star potential. He was in The Kingsman. He did the Elton John biopic. The guy's got some chops, definitely, and he's really charming and lovable as this. He plays this guy who, what's his name? Tetris. IMDb. He's the real guy. Basically, bought the rights to Tetris in the 80s. And it turned out that he really didn't actually have the rights to it, and that the guy who invented Tetris was this Russian programmer. And of course, he lives in Soviet Russia. He really can't make any money off of it. And it's kind of just a fun pet project he did, and it got discovered. And so it's this game of swindlers, basically. There's like all these different swindlers trying to get the rights to Tetris. Now, the story is done in a kind of video game style. Like literally the film is divided into chapters, and each chapter is called a level. And it's pretty brilliant, actually. And they kind of intersperse little like they do shots of the film are sort of redone as if they're in like 8-bit animation to like do scene transitions and stuff. And it's really clever. It has a very clever visual style. It's very nostalgic, but not in a Member Berries way. There is a scene in this film in which a designer at Nintendo unveils their newest top secret technology, and it is the Game Boy. It is unbelievable how cool this scene is. I had the most nostalgia I've had in a long time. I was like, oh my God. Because he's describing the Game Boy and why it's so magical. And you're like, wow, it's easy to forget how magical that handheld machine was back in the day. There was nothing like it. There was nothing like the Game Boy in the early 90s. It was the coolest, and it was, I've told the story before on this channel, your captain was not allowed to have a Nintendo or a Super Nintendo. But I, being the consummate tactician that I am, I found a loophole. The loophole was my parents had not said that I couldn't have a Game Boy. And that was how I defeated the moratorium on Nintendo in my house. And you know what's interesting? One of the through lines of this film is that Tetris, originally, they were going to launch the Game Boy with, what was it? They were going to launch the Game Boy with Mario as the flagship game that came with it, right? They weren't going to do anything else. It was just going to be Mario comes with it, right? Because Mario was their main character. Well, in the movie, they basically convince him, no, do you want millions of children to love this machine, or do you want millions of people to love this machine? Because adults will play Tetris. It's so addictive. That is exactly what happened. When I got Game Boy, the day when I got it as a kid for Christmas, my dad and my mom gave me the stink eye because they're like, well, we told you couldn't have a Nintendo, and that looks dangerously like a Nintendo to me. And I was, no, it's not. It's a Game Boy. I swear. It's not a Nintendo. It's different. And so my dad, give me that thing. Let me see what this is. And he starts playing it. He starts playing Tetris, and he starts playing Mario. And he gets addicted to both of them. And he goes and buys another one the same. He went out to Toys R Us and he bought a second Game Boy with more games. That is how so the film is dead on accurate that like Tetris was addictive for adults as well as kids. So it's brilliant. Great movie. You got to watch it. If I were to give it one critique, I will say it kind of turns into a spy thriller. I swear to God, you wouldn't think it. It turns into a kind of spycraft thriller with the KGB versus these basically game companies trying to get control of it. They spend a little too much time on the back and forth between the KGB and the game designer. Like it literally starts to get exhausting after a point. Okay, fine, I get it. These KGB guys just won't quit. And it's like, but I will say this, it is a fairly damning indictment of communism, this movie is. Like, I don't know what it is lately. We get socialist ants in Quantum Mania. We get capitalism is stealing in Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And we get Batman is a fascist from George Lopez in the Blue Beetle trailer. But for some reason, we keep getting on these woke as hell streaming services like HBO and Apple, we keep getting these damning indictments of Soviet communism. Something is up with this. I don't know what is up with this, but like, why are they allowing this? Why are the woke censors allowing this to get through? They're up to something, folks. They are up to something. I can't figure out what it is. I can't figure it out, but they're up to something because I don't trust this. I'm like, Chernobyl was incredible. Chernobyl was one of the most absolutely eviscerating arguments against communism I've ever seen put to film. Watch it. If you have not seen Chernobyl on HBO, it is incredible. It's phenomenal. It is one of the most it sinks its teeth into communism and just tears it to shreds. Now, I don't know. I've seen some pretty amazing mental jumping jacks from people defending communism, and they might argue, if I were to play devil's advocate, well, that was Stalinism. That wasn't real whatever. All I will say is, if you've got a head on your shoulders, you watch Tetris, you watch Chernobyl, you will understand why communism and socialism really is so damn evil. Why it is so soul-crushing. Why having the right to your property, the right to your intellectual property is really what this film is about. The man who invented Tetris had no right to it. That's basically what the film is pointing out. And it is, when you see how that destroys the human soul, it just tells you socialism cannot work, because if you cannot have the right to what you've created, you cannot have happiness. The pursuit of happiness requires it. So watch it. It's a great movie, very entertaining, very fun, great spy thriller. Number 3 on the captain's list, and then we'll check in with the chat. Sisu. Sisu. Holy shit, is this movie fun as hell? Oh my god! I saw this in Las Vegas when I was there for the meetup, the Friday Night Tights meetup, and stole a day to go see Sisu in the theater. My dad and I watched it. We had a great time. We had a great time watching this movie. And you know what I love about it? So a couple of things. Number one, it's very simple. It knows what it is, this movie. It is a flat out, it's kind of like a Western style Pale Rider. Just you messed with the wrong guy. And it is a Lone Ranger kind of character up against a bunch of Nazis in the closing days of World War II who are trying to steal his gold. Now, a couple of things I like about this. It is not the leftist intelligentsia version of what Nazis are, which is just anyone they don't like. Basically, this is like, no, this is what Nazis were really like. Like, this is why they were so bad. This movie shows what German troops were doing in their fighting retreat out of Russia, out of Europe, just their scorched earth policy and the way that they wrecked everything in their path. The absolute murder and hell that they unleashed on every land that they invaded is so accurately depicted in the way this film approaches it. It's not the subject of the film. It's just the backdrop of the film. It's just incidental to the story, but it's so well portrayed. There is a bit of girl bossery in this, and it is only cringe because there's a real photo op kind of moment to it, sort of like the She's Got Help moment in Endgame. The difference, however, is it is earned. I would say it is earned, but it's pushing its luck. I would say it's earned, but it's pushing it, is just what I would say. I guess because the film calls so much attention to it when it doesn't need to. Like, it doesn't need to call attention to the fact that these women have been abused and that now it's their turn for revenge. You don't need to so over the top. You know what it is? It's a writing term. It's gilding the lily. You know, they had something really beautiful already there, and they just poured a bunch of gold on it and made it just gaudy and over the top. And it's like, you don't need to do that. Okay, I'm gonna have enough fun watching these babes get revenge on their Nazi captors. I don't need you to do this music video level style, marching with the machine guns. I don't need all that. Just show me them kicking ass and I'll like it. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's a minor critique. Most of this, but the whole film is so over the top that, you're kind of in for a penny, in for a pound, if you will. It's a great movie. It knows what it is. It doesn't screw around. It's a great classic story. And you know something else? This is a movie that knows how to stretch a penny, because it was filmed on, I think it was like something like $8 million, or no, I think it was an 8 million euro budget was this movie. And it's incredible. The production value, the cinematography is excellent. The costumes are like, everyone in this movie is filthy as hell. They are just filthy. everything is lived in this movie. It feels like a real war zone. It's not stylized so that you start to feel like there's a level of unreality to it. Freaking great movie. So that's number 3. I just happened to catch this one in the chat. Fu Man Blue says, I'm a little bit gay for Chris Pine, though. Oh, no. Oh, no, Fu Man Blue. I'm sorry. That's the one I saw. Chris Pine's fine. He's fine. But, yeah, I'm not with you on that. He's a little... I don't know what it is. Yeah, he's got moments. He's got moments where he's charming and endearing. Starfury says they should have done Ocean's 11 in a D&D setting. Well, they kind of did, though. Have you seen D&D Honor Among Thieves, Starfury? Because if you have, tell me how that's not Ocean's 11. Well, I guess it's not exactly a heist movie. It's kind of like an adventure slash. It's kind of like a dude with a problem heist movie. That's probably too in the weeds. Anyway, Sisu, Unstoppable Viking 8.5 says Starfury. Yes. Starfury says, isn't communism a damning indictment of communism? You would think. You would think. But unfortunately, there's been a lot of historical revisionism. And the problem is there's just a certain mentality of people that really, I swear to God, I got your captain, saw the barber yesterday. And my barber, of all people, was lecturing. Barber is, okay, fine. It was a hairstylist, all right? I'm very precious that way. Now, he was telling me that I cannot call it what this guy's political views are. I could not tell you. He was so all over the place. I have no clue. I really don't. He could be everything from a libertarian to a leftist wacko. I have no idea. Because 1 minute he'd say one thing, and then he'd completely say something else. And just one of his little gems was, well, socialism can work in small communities. That's where it can work. And I've heard this canard in a lot of places, and I was like, no, it doesn't. Socialism does not work anywhere on any scale. And he's like, oh, yes, oh, sure it does. Yes, it definitely does. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. I can prove it to you. Pick any 5 people in a company. One of them's lazy. One of them works harder than all the others. Any 5 people in any organization. Guarantee it. At random. That's the caveat. You have to pick them at random. It can't be, well, I'm going to pick the top 5 most successful. No, just take a cross-section. 5 randos from any organization. One of them is lazy as hell and lets other people pick up the slack. It's just human nature. And he said, oh, well, that's just one example. I said, I'll give you another reason why it won't work. I don't want to participate. That breaks the system. If I don't want to participate, it breaks the system, which means your options are either give up on the system or there's just a certain amount of people you have to get out of the way. That's how National Socialism works. That's how communism works. If you can get enough undesirable people out of the way, it can work, is the theory. So anyway, that is my departure from what I was talking about. So now, moving on to number 2. My second favorite film of the year, John Wick Chapter 4, the second greatest film of the year. I just live for these movies. I love these movies. Look, they're not perfect. They get a little crazy. They get a little outlandish. I will definitely say, holding up the bulletproof coat thing is getting a little silly. I will admit. That being said, there is just nowhere in cinema, in mainstream cinema anyway, there is just nowhere where you're going to see the work ethic of these films, the choreography, the attention to detail, the world building, the lore building, and the fact that the success of each one of these films is built on the previous. The success of each one of these films is earned. They literally do not announce another one's coming out until they've seen the box office. Imagine that. Imagine if Disney took the same approach. We're not going to announce any more Star Wars films until another one comes out, and then it is successful. And then, if, dear Aunt Kathy, if we then see that film has earned an audience and it has earned a fan devotion, then we will say, well, there seems to be interest here. Let's do another one. That's how they do John Wick. That is why it is fun to watch. Keanu is the absolute frickin' man. It helps a little that he's such a nice guy in real life, and I've seen some things of him in real life that just make me like him more. Look, your Captain as a writer, I admire I admire craftsmen. I admire creators who have a work ethic and a standard of excellence. And what I love about John Wick is from the director to the actors to the supporting cast to the choreography, the cinematography, the editing, the music, all of it. There is a work ethic. And something else, and this is a big one. George Lucas used to say, when I make my movies, I like to, I always want to show someone something new. And that's what I think you have to do. You have to show someone something new. And so when I make my movies, and I agree with Mr. Lucas on this, it's like, there's something great about how every John Wick film shows you something new. It shows you a location. It shows you a way of looking at the location that you've never seen before. It shows you an action scene you've never seen before. Because I'll admit, in John Wick 3, which I consider the weakest of the series, some of the action scenes were getting a bit formulaic. I was getting to the point where it's like, oh yes, this is where he does like 10 headshots, and then he does this part. And I was starting to get a little bored with that. What I like about John Wick 4 is they really changed it up a little. They started doing a couple different things. That freaking scene in the Arc de Triomphe where he's fighting in the middle of traffic it's ridiculous. It's absolutely bananas in the best way. The scene where they have the shot looking down as he's going room to room, it was freaking incredible. It was one of the coolest things to watch I've seen in a long time. Donnie Yen as the blind assassin who is a match for John Wick. Freaking unreal how cool every action scene with him is. There is a Japanese girl who is the daughter of the Continental owner in Tokyo, who is also freaking awesome, by the way. She is an absolutely incredible fighter who uses her agility and her nimbleness to win rather than brute strength, because she can't compete with the brute strength of a stronger opponent, but there is a scene, she has to take down a dude with about 50 stab wounds, and it's absolutely incredible. And it's like, well, that's what it would take, right? And so I just love these movies. They're fun to watch. They're excellent. They're epic. And you are probably wondering, well, what is the Captain's #1 for the year? Well, I'm going to tell you. But first, how about an honorable mention? Honorable mention did not make the list, but deserves the Captain's salute. And that would, of course, be Super Mario Brothers. Captain's salute to the well-meaning and admirably intentioned Super Mario Brothers. Now, look, this movie had greatness in it. It had great potential. I think this could have put Toy Story to shame, this movie. It was close. It was so close. They were missing about 2 or 3 elements that they needed in order to, it's one of the rare times where I've seen a film that was way too short. It was 90 minutes and it was in a hurry. It was in a damn hurry. And I say that this movie was like, it had imposter syndrome. Right? Have you heard of this? The concept of imposter syndrome? It's where you actually are a successful person, but you don't believe that you are because you feel like your success is not earned. You feel like your success is undeserved. It's a major block to manifesting what you want in life, because if you don't believe you deserve a certain level of success, you will actually block yourself from getting it, right? So this is a major issue. People who win the lottery, right? They wind up broke again. Why? Because they actually are kind of imposters. They got all this money, but they didn't earn it, and they know it. And so they don't actually think they deserve it. So anyway, this is a film suffering from imposter syndrome. This is a film that is the most beautiful girl at the party, and you tell her that, and she says, oh no, I'm ugly. That's what this film is to me. I'm like, you look at it, you're like, wow, this is gorgeous. The lore is looking great. The characters are fun. Everyone loves Mario. Mario's iconic. And it's like this film is saying, well, okay, but anyway, the next thing I have to tell you is, and it's like, no, just shut up for a minute, movie, and just be what you are. Just, flourish. Tell me a story about Mario meeting Peach for the first time and their worlds colliding. Tell me a story about them, falling into a, like a Disney kind of, not modern Disney, but like an old school kind of Disney, prince and princess story as far as the romance. Tell me a great hero's journey about Mario beating the bad guy. Give me that adventure. And it's like this movie won't spend the time to give it to you. But that being said, it was beautiful to look at. It was happy. It was a happy movie. That is the most fun I've seen an audience have in the theater all year. I'm not kidding you. Like, that was the most happy I've experienced a film audience the whole year, was when I was in this movie. So it is a movie that brought happiness and joy and color and beauty to the world. And for that, I admire it. And I could tell that they have exactly zero time for people who don't like their lore. You don't understand Nintendo lore. You think Nintendo lore is stupid. You don't get it, Grace Randolph. Too freaking bad, because this is the movie. And I admire that. Sadly, it fell well short of the greatness that it had in it. And I would say that I hope that the next film corrects that mistake. I don't feel optimistic that it will. And that the reason is because I just don't get the feeling that they're aware of this. I just don't think that they're aware as a company that this film had the flaws it had. I think they truly don't. Why should they? It made $1 billion. Who am I? I'm just a guy on the internet. So now, the number one best film of the year that I have seen so far. Are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. Star Fury needs a hug, says Fu Man Blue. Oh no, Star Fury. Oh, you do. Star Fury says, Mutiny, Super Mario is number one. Brig him? Oh yeah, okay. Look, I'm saying I liked it. I'm saying I admire this movie. It's not on the worst list. So, No, listen, if you love this movie, I have no argument with you. Look, believe me, I am this movie's I was rooting for this movie like you wouldn't believe. I love the fact that this movie humiliated Disney. Don't let their lies in the media make you think otherwise. This film humiliated Disney. Humiliated them. And they hate it. They hate it. Oh, Bob Iger goes on those art. Well, the problem is our marketing was not optimized for the most return on investment. It's like, no, what he really means to say is, don't fucking Nintendo. That's what he really is thinking. So don't kid yourself. This movie humiliated Disney because it broke all their narratives, and I love that. I love it. And I was so happy to see a movie that just loved what it is. So I have nothing but praise for this movie. And my critiques of it are constructive. I wish this film had achieved the heights that it was capable of, because I saw the potential. Trust me, there were so many points in this movie where it was really pulling me in and I was enjoying it. And I was like, wow, this is going to get awesome. And then it would just move on to something else. And I was like, what? Where'd you go? I was like, dude, this is like Toy Story potential here. Where are you going? It's like, now we're off to the Donkey Kong Kingdom. We're not finished with Mushroom Kingdom yet. That's so, I hope that helps, Star Fury. And, no, Star Fury says, no one hugs me when I have my Derringer in my hand. Okay. Bruh. Just, all right. I just picture Star Fury just, cleaning his Derringer at home. Wait, Star Fury, you're British, aren't you? You're not capable of having weapons, are you? Anyway. Oh. Hypothetically speaking. So anyhow, the old drunk on the corner is humiliating Disney at the moment, says Star Fury. Yes, you're right. It's not like it's hard. Still. $1 billion, man. Disney owns animation. They were the kings of animation, and nobody even likes their live action shit. So trust me, this was a blow. This was a blow. They won't admit it, but it was. And now for the number one film of the year so far. I give you Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. is the film I have most enjoyed in the theater this whole year. And you are probably thinking the captain is off his nut. You're probably like, what? An animated movie? Believe me, I understand your perspective. I'm as shocked as you are. Of all people, Ryan Cannell was just ranting about how good this movie is. And I was like, well, if the angriest man on the internet, if he thinks this movie is good, it's got to be great. Like, I thought this has got to be something. So I went to go see this movie. It was a perfect, listen to me when I tell you this, it was a perfect hero's journey. Not a single flaw. This film, I don't even think there is okay. The first 5 minutes annoyed me. I will say that. The first 5 minutes annoyed me. Once we get past the giant, the rest of the film is fairly flawless. It's hilarious. The comedy is so funny. It fits. It's got that Shrek quality where it's both doing a parody of fairy tale lore, but also honoring it at the same time. It's excellent. It is absolutely the art style in this film is like nothing I've seen before in an animated film. It's like an actual storybook has come to life. I can't explain it. You just got to see it. Like the way that they do the art in this, it's like a storybook has come to life and the pages are moving, but not in a uncanny valley abstract way. It's like it feels real. It feels Antonio Banderas as this cat is so funny. He's so good. He's got so much personality. He has got so much charisma. Then you have Kitty Softpaws, who's his partner in crime. She does not at any point in the film undermine him. She's not a girl boss. She is a perfect counterpart. Him and her basically form a kind of buddy cop duo, but there's tension because there's some bad blood between them, which is revealed in the film as, okay, I guess I'm not going to do, no need to, it's not like it's a big spoiler, but basically they were in love and he left her at the altar. And so she's got an axe to grind. So actually the tension between them has a story-driven purpose. And frankly, usually when she's insulting him, he deserves it. But then a lot of the time he'll come in and save the day because he's everyone's fearless hero. The villain, there's multiple villains in the movie. They're all excellent. They are all excellent villains. This is like an Avengers film that ties in like 5 different storylines and weaves them together perfectly. They have Goldilocks and the Three Bears, which you would think are kind of just throwaway characters that are played for laughs. They have a charming story all their own. You have what's his name? Tom Thumb or whatever. I forget. He's I forget the name of the character. Anyway, he plays a villain. He's hilarious, but he's malevolent and terrifying at the same time. He's a complete psychopath. It's great. And then finally, the wolf, who is literally the representative of death in this movie. He is malevolent. Every scene he's in is filled with dread. It was a bit much for some of the kids in the audience. I will tell you, small kids, this one's a bit too much for them. I would say you kind of need to be probably 9 years old or older, maybe. I would say to not be super... it's pretty scary. He's pretty scary. I think you got to be kind of an older kid to not get, or if, some little kids aren't as, freaked out by it. But this wolf is malevolent. He is an incredible villain, an incredible antagonist for Puss in Boots to test himself against. The ending is amazing. I would love to see another one. It was a great film. Wrangler is here. Hail, Wrangler. Welcome aboard. You just arrived as we are talking about the top 5 best films of the year for the Captain, and we are at number 1, and we're about to get into the worst films, so the good part is... No, this is the good part. Wrangler says, been a busy day. Can't stick around too long, but I want to say hi and drop a like. Well, thank you, Wrangler. I appreciate that. Captain, salute. And yes, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I do thank you for, if you're lurking, watching it on the replay, please do throw a like and subscribe. I am Captain Garrett. This is the Swords and Starships Channel, and great things are on the horizon. Now, watch Puss in Boots if you're looking for something that's just fun, and the whole family can watch it. It is a bit scary. If little kids get scared easily, you got to be careful with this one. Now, your captain has an axe to grind. Believe me, the 5 worst films of the year, it was hard keeping it to 5, let me tell you. And probably the list would be a lot longer if I hadn't just skipped some of them, because I'm only commenting on ones that I've actually seen. So I'm not going to comment on Wakanda Forever or Thor Love and Thunder, which probably deserve to make... Was Thor this year? Anyway, they probably deserve the list if they were this year, but I didn't watch them, so it would not be fair. It would not be honorable as a captain to critique a film I have not seen. Even though I've seen enough from all the reviews I have seen, it still would be unfair. So I will not critique those films, but I will give you my top 5. And here we are. Let's start with the 5th worst film of the year, shall we? And it's actually a bit of a cheat because it's not a film, it's a TV series. The Last of Us on HBO, the adaptation of the acclaimed, lauded video game that I've regrettably never gotten to play more than about 2 hours of, unfortunately. But I will just flat out tell you, this show, The Last of Us, with Pedro Pascal, it starts out strong. The first 10 minutes of it are pretty good. The next 20 minutes of it, not bad. I'm actually pretty into it. I'm like, this is a pretty cool post-apocalyptic world. I'm kind of liking the lore. Pedro Pascal's not terrible. Ellie, as played by Bella Ramsey, is not super annoying yet. And I'm thinking, I could probably live with this. It was all downhill from there, folks. It was all downhill from there. Let me just give you a post-apocalyptic wasteland trope that I am just freaking sick of. I am sick of this trope. I don't want to see it. Ever. I've seen it in The Walking Dead about 1,000 times, and I don't want to see it anymore. Our main character, Rick, or Daryl, or in this case, Pedro Pascal, is walking through the forest or walking over open ground where there is no obstruction of line of sight, and oh no, stabbed in the gut. Now he's in trouble. It's like out of nowhere, here comes a zombie from behind a tree that minutes ago it was an empty forest. It's like and now they're ambushed, and now they're screwed, and now it's the whole episode is about we've got to find help for Rick, or we've got to find help for Joel. And that the whole episode turns into that. This show is filled with this crap. This show was basically Pedro Pascal getting ambushed. Like pretty much the whole stupid show. There were like 2 good zombie scenes in the whole freaking show. The rest of the thing is mostly gay love stories. Gay love stories and Pedro Pascal getting ambushed like a freaking bitch. Like the absolute bitch that he is in every show he's in. Mandalorian, what a freaking bitch. He is like, I am so sick of this guy being Hollywood's favorite bitch that I'm just done with it. I am done with anything he wants to be in from now on, because you know what it's going to be? Fist to his face 24/7. The Critical Drinker, for whatever reason, kind of was half in on this, and it's like, I will just say, no, actually, I'd have to rewatch his review to be fair, but I will just say that Bella Ramsey in this, I don't understand this casting. She doesn't look like the original character. She doesn't sound like her. She doesn't act like her. She wasn't super annoying at first, but by the end of the series, I'm like, I can't take any more of this. Like, I can't. This is like watching paint dry, this show. And I don't understand it either, because they had one of the most original, interesting zombie worlds you could ever have. The cordyceps concept is brilliant. They did ruin it, though. They watered it down in this show because in the video game, there are these spores you can inhale that can infect you with it. Oh, but see, that was too complicated. Oh, that was just too complicated. So they just changed it to the most boring trope that's in every other zombie. Oh, if you get bit, you turn into one. Oh, great. So I'm so glad that we undertook to commit this to film to literally lower the bar to what every other zombie story does. Every other zombie show. You get bit, you turn into one. How interesting would it have been if they had to literally craft episodes around them wearing gas masks, around them not being able to go into areas because of spores? You could have had the episode where Joel gets a puff in the face of the spores or whatever, and there's like that tense 20 minutes where we don't know whether he's infected or not. I mean, there's things you could do, but no, that would have been too complicated. They wouldn't have been able to film it as easily. So they're like, nah, it'll be fine, as the drinker would say. So look, a lot of people were saying they liked this show, that it was not bad. Fine. If you like it, fine. I'm a Walking Dead guy. I watched so many seasons of The Walking Dead that when I see these tropes, I'm out. Like when I see the ambush trope, I'm done. When I see the zombie coming out of nowhere, it's a trick of the camera. The camera does not have a periphery, right? The camera doesn't have a periphery. The actual characters, though, do. So when a character gets ambushed because what you couldn't see on the camera's periphery, it's stupid. Because in real life, the character would be able to have a wide periphery and see the zombie coming from the side, right? They'll literally do 360-degree views of the forest. There's no zombies in the forest. None. But because the camera can't see this side of it, now there's a zombie. It's stupid. So when I see these tropes, I get tired of it. I just wanted to see Joel be a badass. There's one scene in the end where he's a badass. By then, I couldn't care less. They spend 2 entire episodes on boring. Well, one of them wasn't bad, but it was the first gay love story was at least an interesting story. It had no relevance or purpose in this overall season. It was a waste of time, and it just shouldn't have been there. It just should not have been part of this first season. And then they adapted the gay love story from the video game that was a downloadable content. And when I actually read what was in the downloadable content, it was much more interesting because it was about her trying to scavenge a mall under like zombies attacking her while remembering this. In the actual show, it's just a long, boring, plotting, not very well acted teen gay romance. So it's mostly gay love stories and Joel getting beaten down like a bitch. Number 4. Oh, wait, before we get to number 4. Yes, I almost forgot. Oh, I noticed. Did you notice this? I noticed this. Okay. Look at this is the cover for the video game. Do you notice something? You see Joel in the background holding a gun. He's kind of looking back. You see Bella in the foreground, right? Now, the composition of this image is implying something. It is implying that Bella is kind of our protagonist, but Joel is he's our leader, right? He's leading the mission. She is following. Do you notice that? Look at how they changed the composition in the TV version. See the difference? It's exactly reversed. Joel is following and in the foreground. Bella is in the background leading. She is exactly in the position Joel is in the video game version. He is exactly in the position she is in the video game version. They swapped it. Now, I only caught this because I was looking for this image for this live stream, and I saw that, and I was like, I didn't even notice that. And it's like, now, you could say, oh, well, it was a small oversight. They just liked it better. It's like, no, look at how carefully they recreated the composition of the cover. They wanted this to look just like the game cover, but they still made sure to swap the roles. Do you need any other evidence of why this TV show is such garbage? It doesn't even understand what made the original game so good. Joel is a bitch. Star Fury says, change the hang on a second. Change the interstitial worst, please. I will have to... The damn heart emoji thing is in the way. I'm having trouble reading your chat. Dang it! You have to chat something else so it moves up. This is so bad. This is so amateur. All right, here we go. Number 4, I should say. Captain's number 4 is, and I know. My dear sailors and star nuts, this is a heartbreaker that your captain has this take, but I do. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is my number 4 worst film of the year. I know. Some people may hate me for this. I am sorry, okay? I'm sorry to report this to you. It gives me no pleasure. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy 1 immensely. I saw it multiple times. I love that film. It's excellent. I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Not quite as good as the first one, But you know what? I've actually liked it more on rewatches. This third film is a mess. It is an absolute mess. It is weird and emotionally manipulative with the cute animals. It is stuffed with so much. You know what it is? It's a lot of Quantum Mania type visuals in this movie, like the weird flesh space station, the space station that's organic, and so it's made of skin, and they've got to freaking cut into it. It's like, what? And then you've got Nathan Fillion is floating around in some Michelin Man costume. What? And then the villain. Everyone is just raving about how good the villain is in this film. I could not stand the villain in this film. He starts out as being this kind of cerebral and interesting megalomaniac, and he's got all these delusions of grandeur. And he starts wheedling to the characters about his designs on building this perfect utopia. So in the beginning, he's kind of interesting, and he kind of invites you into his way of thinking of things. In the second half of the movie, he turns into an absolute screaming maniac in every single scene, and it kills all the tension. He's not scary. He's not intimidating. He's yelling, "You are failing me!" I'm like, who cares? Like, who cares? You're a loser, bro. Like, I'm not. This is not the stuff of Thanos. Okay, this is not the next major villain of the series. And if they make him the major villain, what is he? The mastermind. I forget the name of the character. If they make him the villain of Avengers, that's a loser. I'm just telling you right now. It's not going to work out. Nor is Kang. Oh shoot! You're right. Oh, I'm sorry, Starfury. You are right. Dude, your captain screwed up big time. I forgot. Okay, let me fix this. For the replay. I gotta fix that. Hang on, I got it. You're right. Get rid of that. And we get that and get rid of that. Nope. This is the worst. This is the worst stream ever. No. There we go. Oh my god. Starfury. I wish I would have understood what you were saying sooner there. He said to distress call it. Your hail was garbled. Your hail was garbled. Okay. So I had the wrong sub banner there. It was saying best and it should have been saying worst. So I'm just going to do a quick replay. Captain's top 5 worst films of the year. The Last of Us TV show, garbage. And did not start out as garbage, but it swerved into garbage. And number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 4, worst film of the year. And what else can I say about this? Well, I will just say that now that I think it's spoiler alert for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think we're safe. So they have this whole thing about Counter-Earth in the film, and there's all these animal people living on it. One of the cringiest things I've ever seen. I was embarrassed for the actors who are playing these characters because they're acting like soccer moms, but they have bat ears. What? Oh my God. My skin was crawling in this part of the movie, but whatever. But they start to kind of win you over, right? Because they are just people. They have weird bat ears, but fine. They're people. They're living their life, minding their own business. And the Guardians are, needing their help to find the villain. They get to the villain's lair, and the villain says, they say to the villain, well, this isn't a utopia. We just saw 3 separate, quite conveniently, we just happened to drive by 3 separate examples of bad human behavior in the back alleys of your street, in your streets. So you failed. You failed to create the grand utopia that you were trying to create, they say to him. And Guardians Volume 3. I just need to, I want to say Mastermind. I know it's not Mastermind. What is the name of the character? He is the High Evolutionary. That's what his name is. Okay, so they're saying to the High Evolutionary, which, I mean, it's pretty cool. I just keep forgetting that title. The High Evolutionary. And they're saying, your utopia failed. There's a lot of crime and bad stuff going on down there. So what do you have to say for that, huh? And he says, you're right. It is a failure. I'm going to destroy it all right now. And I'm like, what? And he's like, so because I'm thinking, this movie should be about Chris Pratt's Star-Lord saving the life of his friend. This should have been a a friendship story between Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon. That was the story. For whatever reason, they stuffed it full of the Russian talking dog and this very uninteresting guy on the left here in the I can't even remember the guy's name. Don't care. He's inherited the weird arrow which is cool when Yondu was using it. Yondu was interesting. This guy is not. And so don't care. Why is he in the movie? Then Drax, the Destroyer, who was an excellent character in the first film, is a big dumb joke the whole movie. Nebula, who was, interestingly enough, one of the most, she kind of won me over the course of several films and completely lost me in this film because they just made her look not that, she has this very, dude bod going on here in this poster. She looks that way in the film. I don't understand why they made her so abrasive. Gamora is annoying. I like Peter Quill. Peter Quill is still fun. He's still a great character. Groot was fine. Rocket Raccoon had a really good story. There is a good story buried in this film, is what I'm trying to say. There is a good film buried within this film. The problem is they stacked so much garbage on it that it just ruined it. So back to what I interrupted myself. On Counter-Earth, I'm thinking this is going to be the main finale of the film. They're going to save Counter-Earth from this madman killing all these people. And I'm thinking, oh, that makes sense. That's a good ending for the film. No, he just destroys this whole planet. All these people dead. And that's the last we hear of it. Oh, well, gone. Billions of lives lost. Like it was nothing. And I'm thinking, then why did we spend all this time on Counter-Earth looking at these weird bat ear people when all we were going to see 5 minutes later is they're all dead now? And who cares? So this is why I don't like this movie. I don't like the villain. It doesn't seem to understand what it is about. It's filled with characters that aren't that interesting, who are ruining what is interesting in the film, which is Rocket Raccoon. Now, what I will say is I understand why people like it. I understand because there were moments in it that were brilliant. Peter Quill resuscitating Rocket Raccoon is one of the most powerful, touching scenes in the whole film. It moved me. I was feeling it. I was like, wow, that is beautiful. And there was the scene where Rocket Raccoon is building friendships with all the other creatures that have been experimented on. There was a lot there that was moving and powerful. Unfortunately, looking at woodland critters that have been animated was occasionally taking me out of the experience. I'm sorry, okay? There's only so much I could do with talking Bambi. It was just weird. They just spent too much time on it. It was too manipulative. If they had dialed it down just a skosh, I think it could have worked. Then the finale of the film is Rocket Raccoon freeing all the lab animals, and you've got this ridiculous Disney scene where all these woodland animals are jumping out of a spaceship, and they just totally forget all about space physics in this movie. They just completely throw it out the window when it suits them. They're like, if we smush two ships together, that will create a hard seal against vacuum, and we're fine. It'll be fine, brah. And it's like, no. That's not how vacuum works. And don't tell me that it's it's a fictional movie. Who cares? It's like, no, these films established that there are rules in space, because in this same film, Peter Quill gets exposed to vacuum and he nearly dies. Also, can I just tell you, that's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. It was truly horrifying to watch Peter Quill's face explode in vacuum and think, wow, they just killed off his character. This is horrifying. That was depressing. What a sacrifice, though. And I'm processing this. And then they just revive him. And it was like the Kirk with the Tribbles thing in Star Trek 2009. Oh, he's back. Oh, then why was I subjected to watching his face explode in space if you were just going to bring him back 5 minutes later? Why? I didn't need that, okay? So I'm just saying it's a weird movie. It doesn't seem to figure out whether it wants to be... Oh, last thing on this movie. They end the film with, the band is breaking up. The Guardians, we need to go our separate ways. Why? Because reasons. Well, we were never supposed to hang out this much. Well, I've got to go on this adventure and you've got to go on that adventure. And it's so sad. Why? There's no reason for it. It's like this movie wants it to be the finale it wants it to be the finale, but not actually commit. It doesn't want to commit to it being the finale. Certainly not the way Endgame did. And I'm not saying that they should have killed off anyone. Don't misunderstand. It was wise not to kill off Peter Quill. That being said, it was a confusing movie. It had a very confusing tone all throughout. It was like sometimes it was the usual Guardians of the Galaxy, and sometimes it was like, this is the last one, folks. But not really. And if the chat, feel free to disagree with me. Yes. It's not your fault, Star Fury, that I missed the hail. It was not your fault. You were looking out. I have this dumb, stupid heart emoji, and it's in my way, and I can't see what you're saying. Anyway. Yeah, so if anyone has any thoughts on Guardians, definitely share it. But let's move on, shall we? And believe me, it gives me no pleasure to report Guardians was... I wanted to walk out of this movie, no lie. I was like, an hour in, I was like, I'm tired of this. This is weird. I don't like it. I want to move out. I want to move out of this theater right now. But I stayed. And some of it was good, most of it was not. Number 3 on the Captain's Midyear Top 5 Worst Films Ever. The Little Mermaid live-action remake. Oh my God, have I suffered for you this year, my dear Sailors and Starnuts? I suffered for you watching this movie. And I'm just going to tell you that, let me tell you the thing I hate the most about this movie, okay? I'm going to tell you right now. After that sip of coffee, that is. The worst thing about this film is it is a trick that is being played on normies. This is a mean, dirty little underhanded trick that they are playing on normies with this movie. Let me explain. Normies and the uninitiated, that is, young kids who did not grow up with the animated film that I grew up with. I was in first grade, I think, when the animated film came out. So I grew up with it. Kids today have not grown up with the animated film, so they don't know any better. And so they don't have any reference of comparison. Normies who, let's face it, most adults, at least normal adults, are probably not spending a lot of time rewatching The Little Mermaid unless they're putting it on for their kids. So it's probably been a while since they've seen it. Nothing against enjoying the animated classics. I do as well. But I'm just saying, they probably aren't, This film fakes them into thinking that it has moments of greatness because some of the best parts of this movie are the parts that faithfully recreate the animated film. Those parts of the film are a cheap and poor imitation of the animated film, which was brighter, more colorful, more full of life and fun. And what they do is they sort of do this carbon copy that is dark. It is dismally lit. There are these weird, lifeless animals that are talking with expressive voices, which is jarring and confusing, but it's just convincing enough that a normie can say, as one normie did, I loved this movie. It was so good. And I'm like, watch the animated film and tell me if you still think it is. This is a trick that is being played on you. Now, the worst parts of this film are the parts where they deviate from the script of the animated film. When they deviate, it is pure woke garbage. It is absolute. It is made for TV movie pathetic. This is a film, this should have gone straight to Disney Plus. I'm not shitting you. This should have gone straight to Disney Plus with this production quality. They have this island, which is Prince Eric's Island. It looks like they did not have the budget for extras, folks. They have 20... She's going to the thriving town that Eric calls home, and she's going to go to the bustling market with all the good people. And you know what it is? It's a couple food stalls on a beach. It's nothing. There's no one there. They do this really cringe, like Caribbean, kind of like reggae tourist, dance. Like, it's like an event put on at the Marriott. It's so pathetic. It's like... And I'm thinking this is supposed to be this country that Eric is presiding over. Eric's mother. Eric is the most lily white soy boy you've ever seen. His mother is black and she's the queen. There was no queen in the animated film. There was no queen or king. There was just Grimsby. And for some reason, they make his mother black, okay? Now, they explain that he's adopted. But why? Why? What is the purpose of this? And so they have this odd cultural melting pot on this island of like all different races, all living together inexplicably. Now, the argument goes, oh, well, why do you care, Toxic Man Baby? This is just a fantasy movie. Didn't you know? Didn't you know mermaids aren't real? It's like, yes, dipshit, I know that it's fantasy and mermaids aren't real. I'm telling you, this is what you people say. This is what you people tell us. We have to not have things in movies that are problematic because we can't be whitewashing history. And you know what? And you know what happened? All the wokies came after this movie. You know why? Because, why is this Caribbean island being portrayed as this multiracial, harmonious utopia when we all know how black people actually got to the Caribbean? And why is this movie not addressing it? I'm like, yeah, movie. Yeah, Disney. You coward. Why didn't you make this a dark, depressing movie about the Haitian Revolution? Oh, I dare you to do it. So anyway, now, one more point on this, because you know what? I ain't having this stupid argument anymore, because we are told by the same woke idiots that want to lecture us about how we are being obsessed with a fantasy movie that isn't even, oh, why do you care? It's like, well, why do you care? You know, you're the ones that go around lecturing everyone else in society about cultural appropriation. Oh, no, you can't have people dressing up as other cultures on Halloween because that's cultural appropriation. If you are a European, if you are of European descent and you decide to wear cornrows, you are culturally appropriating and you should be shot. And it'd be for cultural appropriation. Meanwhile, this film appropriates every level of European culture and repurposes it in this weird multiracial melting pot that wouldn't exist in reality on any plane of existence. It's just not reality. Nothing in the film establishes why this is the case. King Triton has 7 daughters, each of a different race from the same merwoman. Okay? The film is not in any way addressing this logically. So my point is, it doesn't even fit with the logic of the film. They appropriate every level of Renaissance era to, I would say, Enlightenment era European culture. They appropriate the aristocratic traditions. They appropriate the technology. They appropriate just all of the cultural heritage of European ancestors. They take it all and they give it to all these different races. Now, listen, I don't care. I don't believe in cultural appropriation. It's not a real thing. Okay? Only racist people, only people who want to view the world through racial grouping think of the world that way. I just think of it as human beings interact with each other and we pick up traits from each other. It's called being human. It's called, have you ever heard of something called the Silk Road? It existed for thousands of years between China and Europe. Thousands. It existed for hundreds of years, let's say, and it allowed an exchange of culture from the Far East to the Middle East to Europe. It allowed an exchange of culture across all of it. What do you think the Roman Empire was, you idiots? It extended across North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. It was the roads that the Romans built allowed culture to travel and cross-pollinate across hundreds of different cultures. It's called humanity. So in your sick worldview, cultural appropriation is a thing and it's evil, but it's okay when you do it to Europeans. Well, with all due respect, go to hell. That's what I have to say about that. So no, this movie is woke garbage. It's woke trash. It has no logical consistency. It is a poor, cheap imitation. It is uncanny valley. It was awful. It was torture. And if you think that it is a good movie, I feel sorry for you because you have bought into the illusion. Watch the animated film after watching this movie and tell me if you still feel the same way. And if you do, well, the captain has done his best, but you can't save them all. Number 2, second worst film of the year. Oh my God, what even can I say? What can I not say about this movie? Peter Pan and Wendy. I have this could torture terrorists in Guantanamo Bay. Okay, this could legally meet the definition of torture. This is waterboarding. This movie. It is one of the most awful, mean-spirited. Woke falls utterly short of how bad this movie is. It is mean-spirited. This movie is child abuse. Okay, it is child abuse that they cast this poor boy to play Peter Pan. He has zero. Listen to me when I tell you this. He has zero screen presence. He has no acting ability. He could barely carry a community theater play, this kid. Look at this kid. Look at that face. He does this weird pursing his lips thing in every. Like, have you ever seen a kid that is like playing and is overacting and they do this because they're concentrating, but because they're concentrating, they're like, they're just, it's in their face. Like when you see a kid like doing like cutouts or something and they've got like their tongue sticking out, like, that's what his acting is like. It's like he's concentrating and you can see it on his face that he's concentrating. His lines are delivered through his teeth like this. When they were going to go to Neverland. We're going to go to Neverland. And that's everything he says is in the same monotone, droning voice. He has no adventure about him. He has no daring do. He has nothing of the original Peter Pan character whatsoever. But why is he in this role? I'll give you one guess. And that is why I say it is child abuse, because affirmative, that's not even the right word. I would say forced diversity hiring has created a bizarre landscape in which a child actor who has no talent whatsoever is cast in a role because we can finally stick it to the toxic racist who wrote the original Peter Pan story. That would be Mr. Barry. Now, I got nothing against any of the kids in this film. They're just, I feel bad for them because it's not their fault that they were put into this monstrosity. And probably all the creeps in Hollywood are just filling their heads full of all the nonsense about how, oh, well, if there's any blowback online to this movie, it's because of racists and misogynists who hate you. And it's like, it's cruel what they do to the minds of these young actors, because it's like they're filling their heads full of hate for no reason. It's like, no, you are working for people who think you are a commodity, and they don't care that they're putting you in a role that you're not suited for in a badly written script. They could care less. They're just they're soulless corporate shills that made this movie. Jude Law plays Captain Hook. It is one of the blandest performances I've ever seen from him. It happens to be the best performance in the movie, and it's still awful. Of course, he has to play a Captain Hook with a tragic backstory, and he was misunderstood. Basically, his backstory turns Peter Pan into the villain. And you know what? I'm already spending more time on this than I even want to. I'll just close by saying Wendy. Oh my God. She is one of the most depressing characters ever committed to film. She is bratty. She is an asshole. I'm not shitting you. She bitch slaps this poor kid playing Peter Pan in the most, I've never seen anything like it. She just, for no reason, winds up, whack, just cold cocks him, knocks his ass to the ground. It's so, and I'm thinking, this is your idea of a charming, strong female whammon? I mean, this is mean. She's a freaking bully. She totally snitches on her brothers. She like whacks him in the face with a wooden sword. She doesn't give a shit. She does what she wants. She's Cartman. She's freaking Cartman in this movie. I'm not kidding you. And then, what else? Yeah, well, yes. What is her happy thought? Her happy thought, and I shit you not, my dear sailors of Starnauts, her happy thought is that one day she'll be a strong career whammon and she'll die alone. She'll die alone, having had all this great success in her life, having never been a mother, never been a wife, just a successful career woman. And that is her happy thought. Well, you can freaking have it, my dear. You are welcome to it. Any women who want that for their future, I will never stand in your way. You can have it. That ain't the future I want for myself. So dying alone, successful career man, no, thank you. But if that's what women want these days, well, who the devil am I to say no? Now, before we get to the worst film of the year, and I wonder if anyone can call it, because I can tell you probably won't be surprised, but before we get to the worst film of the year, like what could be worse than Peter Pan and Wendy? Well, I'll tell you. Let me give you an honorable mention. Honorable mention did not make the list, but very nearly. I give you Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Miles Morales Across the Spider-Verse, as I like to call it. Now, this might be a bit of a controversial take, because I know that a lot of people liked this movie and thought it was pretty good. And you know something? I was almost one of those people. I was almost one of those people that would have said, yeah, this was a pretty good movie, flawed, had some problems, but pretty good, some good action. And then it just, reality hit me after I sat with it for a few minutes after leaving the theater, and I sat with it, and I realized, oh my God, this movie is a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. Why? Because the only way that you can truly enjoy this movie is if you decide mentally that, like, Miles Morales is an interesting character. Now, how can you do that? Well, you have to do that by kind of coming to the conclusion that he's not as interesting as Peter Parker. And I guess what I'm saying is, could you just forget about the stupid multiverse for a second. Could you just make a movie in which Miles Morales is Spider-Man? There are no alternate Spider-Men. There are no multiverses. It's just him. It's just him in a movie on a Spider-Man adventure. There is no reference to Peter Parker in this hypothetical film. There is no reference to Spider-Gwen Stacy. It is a Miles Morales story. Could that be interesting? I submit to you, based on what I have seen here, maybe it could be somewhat interesting. I doubt it, but it certainly could never be as interesting as a Peter Parker Spider-Man movie. It couldn't. It's not possible. Do you know how I know that? Because in this movie, it is stuffed with Peter Parker characters, and every one of them is turned into a weirdo dweeb. Every one of them. The one Peter Parker that they allow to have some, like, speaking lines, basically, is saddled with the weirdest. He's saddled with his baby. He's in battle with a baby strapped to his chest. It's not just that it's bizarre and comedically undermining. It's that it's irresponsible. It undermines the morality of the character. It undermines the morality of Peter Parker. Do you get what I'm saying here? Peter Parker is such a he is my favorite superhero. I'm saying this as my favorite superhero by a mile is Spider-Man. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is my favorite superhero. And that is because of Peter Parker. Because Peter Parker is, to me, one of the most moral, one of the most virtuous, but also one of the most, like, flawed and interesting protagonists in any comic book. I love the character. And it is precisely his morality that it is his defining characteristic. What is the one thing they take away from him in this movie? His morality. Because no moral father would charge into a freaking war with his baby. It's not, unless the circumstances were that he had no choice. That's a different thing. If that were what it was, I'd be fine with it. If it were like, oh, his baby's in danger and he had to snatch her up into his arms and web swing her out of danger, of course, that would be fine. That's not what this is. He literally just thinks it's fun to go web slinging with his baby. What? This movie is filled with woke trash. And it's notable particularly because this movie is also filled with things that could have been amazing. It's filled with incredible action scenes that are breathtaking. It is filled with animation and artwork that is top notch. It shows you some of the most awesome looking Spider-Man action you've ever seen. And it actually has character work that's pretty good for Miles Morales, for Gwen Stacy, for Miguel, for the villain, the Spot. It actually has really well drawn. The core characters in the film are well drawn. Every single moment of greatness in this film is interrupted with some woke garbage that I don't care about. The pregnant Spider-Woman on a motorcycle who is annoying. She's preachy. She's overbearing. I don't like her. She has to butt in to every. She's that friend that just won't take the hint and leave the party so that we can have fun with the other characters. No, they put a stupid spider T-Rex in this. Why? I don't know. So it's just I'm over it. I'm tired of letting these films trick me into thinking I'm supposed to give them some kind of fair shake. They don't deserve it. This movie is a loser. And it is wearing the skin of better characters in order to hide its deficiencies. And that, I submit to you, is why people think that they like it. That to the extent that people that would, I think I would generally agree with, to the extent that they like this film, I think that's what it is. I don't think they are seeing through the illusion to its full extent, which is just think about it for 1 second. 1 second. Would you rather see this, or would you rather just see a Peter Parker Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire? That settles it for me. It's like, this movie's garbage. There's no point to it. I don't like it. So honorable mention to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Thanks for nothing. One last thing I will say about it. I like Spider-Gwen. She was cool. It turns out, see, this is funny. I said this in our last live stream, my dear sailors and starnauts. It was funny to me because Gwen Stacy actually had the most Peter Parker-like story arc. And I thought that was actually pretty fun. And I was kind of enjoying a lot of I was enjoying the whole thing about how her father thinks that she killed Peter Parker, which is kind of, that's always a fun trope from the Peter Parker kind of story. And I was enjoying her. I was enjoying her character. I don't like the head shave. It looks ugly. But aside from that, she's a really good character. Well, and it was odd to me that why is this film so overstuffed? Like, why not just make it about Miles, Gwen, Miguel, and the Spot? Just make it those 4 characters, and it could have been a pretty good film. Why did you stuff it with all these other stupid characters that I don't care about? Indian Spider-Man was cool. But other than that, that's basically, I don't need all this other garbage. Well, it turns out, my dear sailors and starnuts, that originally they had planned on making a separate Spider-Gwen movie, and that and then there was going to also be a Miles Morales movie. Well, they smushed them together and they made them into one movie. Well, that explains it. It's lazy. Jeez. These people that make these garbage corporate filmmakers, they just can't help themselves, can they? Anyway. Still, it could have worked. It could have worked if you just made it about those 4 that I just listed. Miles, Miguel, Gwen, the Spot. If you just made it those 4 characters with a couple supporting here and there, it could have been a great film. Would have is a bit strong. Could have. Now, it is time. It is time. The worst film so far of 2023 that your poor captain has endured. And it is, drumroll please. Oh, I can't wait to tell you. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. How can I describe how much I hate this movie? I can't even begin to tell you how I hate this movie. And you're probably thinking, this is worse than Peter Pan and Wendy. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, is it really? And it's like, yes, it is. Because even though Peter Pan and Wendy, it was as close to literal torture as I can imagine to watch that stupid movie. I full confession, I skipped a couple moments. I just click, skip that. I'll watch that part. I was like, even with all of that, Quantumania, you have heard me on this channel complain a little bit about CGI, just a little. You've heard me just a little bit complain about CGI. If I were to pick the one film in all film history that best exemplifies why CGI has become lazy, bloated, completely antithetical to good storytelling, why action sequences have become purposeless, comedy has been misunderstood as a tool in storytelling. This film exemplifies all of that. It is stuffed with garbage. I mean, freaking garbage. It is visual garbage. They seem to think in this movie that if you just stuff it with enough weird creatures, it will just pass as a weird other world. It's like, no, that's not how storytelling works. There's no consistency whatsoever to the quantum realm. There is nothing interesting about it. They have weird alien amoeba creatures standing right next to just humans. What? Why are there humans standing right next to weird amoeba creature? It's like you can't even decide what this world is for 1 second. There's no logical consistency to anything in this film. And then don't even get me started on the actual plot. There is none. Now, you could argue, well, the plot is they get sucked into the quantum realm and they have to escape. Well, if that's enough to keep you entertained, you're welcome to it. But I will just tell you that does not a hero's journey make. And what we have in this movie is mostly just a lot of very on-the-nose dialogue that's not actually even explaining things. It's just stalling. Most of the dialogue in this film is stalling because we just need to get to the next scene and we don't want to use up too much of the plot to get there. I swear to God. There's a lot of kind of dialogues like, tell me what's going on. I don't have time to tell you what's going on. You just have to trust me. But seriously, don't I deserve to know what's going on? No, I can't stop and tell you what's going on. There's too much going on. All the dialogue is like that in this movie. Kang the Conqueror, Jonathan Majors, he was very celebrated for his performance before the dark times, before his career took a very unexpected turn for the worse. He was very celebrated as the savior of the MCU because he was such an amazing performance. Now, what I will say is, yeah, his performance was good. He has, I will say this, unlike the High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you actually feel menace when he's on the screen in Quantum Mania. The problem is that his character is not very interesting. He's not, that's just, what else can I tell you? He's just not a very interesting character. Nothing can quite compare to seeing Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, these two storied great actors, walking around in this volume surrounded by just weird creatures asking about how many holes people have, and Michael Douglas sticking his hands into jelly to pilot a ship. It's embarrassing. It's cringe. It's like there's just no reason. And then you have Ant-Man himself, who is browbeaten and emasculated as a father. He's never really allowed to be the star of this movie. His daughter, you know what's so funny is we're lectured all the time about the male gaze and how women are not there to be easy on the eyes for you. But what I find interesting is that they swapped the actress who played his daughter in Avengers Endgame, who actually, I think, kind of fit the role and looked more like her. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think they swapped her for a more attractive actress. They just thought, we want someone more attractive, and they went and got a prettier actress. I would have preferred the previous actress because she was good looking and everything. And it's like, but the point is that maybe she didn't have the acting chops. I wish I could make that case because the actress that they have in this movie playing his daughter also doesn't really have acting chops. They have this character, MODOK, who is, Corey Stoll's character of Yellow Jacket in the first film was already dumb enough. He was a one-dimensional villain. He was mustache twirling. He wasn't that interesting. I didn't like him in the first one, quite frankly. They quite literally stuff him into this giant head creature in this movie. They stretch the face of the actor with CGI. It is some of the worst CGI since The Flash, I can now say. But until The Flash, anyway. Until Falling Babies. And his entire... there is a weird thing happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Villains are not allowed to actually just be villains anymore. They all have to be misunderstood somehow. They all have to have some redemption. And look, I'm one for redemption stories. Don't get me wrong, but they're even just getting lazy about it now because they defeat MODOK, the most devastating weapon ever. Who cares? And he's lying in ruins. He's been defeated, and he's whining. I can't remember the lines now. He's just whining about his life and how sad this all is. And what's the name of his daughter? I don't remember. Anyway, she says, just you need to stop being a dick, man. Just stop being a dick. And it's supposed to be this big funny line, and that becomes the impetus for him to completely reverse himself and become a hero and, from his point of view, join the Avengers. And then he dies, and they basically humor him while he's dying, but consider him a loser, even though he did just help save their lives. There's an army of ants. They attack Jonathan Majors' character, Kang, who's got to defeat them. And then there's a post-credit scene where there's a lot of different Kangs. They're all alternate realities. And I wanted to leave the theater. I was like, I want this to be over. It's not even just this movie. It's like, I can just call every shot now. It's like, oh, now we have to have the big hero army surging over the hill. And then the villain has to realize he's losing. And so I'm so over this crap. I don't care. This isn't an interesting story. I'm tired of multiverses and magic and quantum realms and alternate dimensions and the timelines. I just don't want any more of this garbage. And I'm so tired of it. And this movie is the most stuffed. It is so stuffed with garbage, I can't even tell you. So anyway, I hate Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It was an awful fever dream. Every joke in it falls flat. And worse, some of the jokes are embarrassing for the audience. And it goes back to what the normie I referenced earlier, the normie companion who joined me to watch The Flash, what she was telling me after the movie was, this movie made me unsettled, meaning The Flash. It made me unsettled. It gave me anxiety. I was waiting for something and I wasn't sure what. And I said, that describes all of these. It describes Quantumania. It describes Thor: Love and Thunder. It describes Wakanda Forever. It describes Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. It describes Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. The Little Mermaid. It describes all of them. They give you anxiety because you know that there are things that are meant to be paid off. There are things that are supposed to be happening, but they're not happening. And I don't mean it like this is the way the story has to go. I'm saying like we are being subjected to weird imagery that doesn't make sense. We are being subjected to bizarre scenarios that would never occur in any real world. And yet we are meant to accept them all without question. And it's unsettling. And I would submit to you that many of the normie audience that are watching these films, and maybe they're kind of enjoying it, or they don't totally like it, but they can't put their finger on it, or they like it, but it was all right. But there's something in the back of their mind, like a splinter in their brain, as Neo would have said in The Matrix, that is driving them mad, and they're not consciously aware of it. And it's like, what they are not consciously aware of is that there are no hero tropes in this. There is no consistent through line or journey. The CGI is just stuff. It's not telling you anything you don't know. It's not showing you anything you want to see. Nothing in this is to serve the story or the characters or there isn't actually a plot. To the extent there's a plot, it's confusing and it's grim. Sometimes you're ahead of it. You already know what's going to happen and you're just waiting for it to happen. Other times you think you should be expecting something to happen, but it's just confusing, bizarre, contradictory plot elements running up against each other. There's all these cameos. You vaguely feel like you should know what they're referencing, but you can't remember because maybe you didn't watch that show on Disney Plus. They are leaving audiences feeling stressed out. They are stressing out the audience, and much of the audience is not consciously aware of it, is what I think is going on. And in my case, I am consciously aware of it because I see the trick. I see through the trick and what they're doing. And this is not to say that like I'm brilliant or anything. I am, of course. But it's not to say that it's any special brilliance on my part. I'm just someone who has slogged through enough of this crap and happens to have an interest in story structure. And I have figured out the trick that they're playing on me. that I did not always understand was being played on me. And I feel bad for normies who just haven't seen it yet. But they're starting to, if the box office receipts are any evidence. So there you have it, my friends. Ant-Man Quantumania, the worst film of the year. I have spoken. What do you think, chat? Starfury says, not Shazam 2. Well, see, the rule was, Starfury, that I have to have actually seen it to put it on the list, because I felt that was only fair. And I did not watch Shazam 2 because I don't care. I could not muster the energy to care about that movie. I did watch Black Adam because I kind of thought, I appreciated that The Rock put some work into it, and I was kind of into that. I thought, if The Rock's doing good, maybe it's worth a look. It was all right. There were things about Black Adam that were fine, and it's like, look, I don't have superhero fatigue. I love superheroes. I have always loved superheroes. I love Spider-Man. I love Superman. I love Batman. I love Captain America. I love Iron Man. I love characters with costumes and secret identities. I find the moral struggle of superheroes infinitely interesting. There are a million good stories you can tell. What I have is corporate superhero bullshit fatigue. I'm tired of the CGI. I'm tired of action scenes with no point. I am tired of badly animated fallen babies in a fucking microwave. What? I can't even... That was The Flash, if you missed it earlier in the stream. I can't even believe how stupid these movies are. And the more they fail, the more of them they make. And I'm like, so I see Shazam, and I'm like, who cares? I'm not going to, But listen, you want me to watch it? I'll watch it. I'll watch it for you. Fu Man Blue says, I don't understand why they call the U.S. a melting pot. If you try to embrace anything about your neighbor, people scream appropriation. Sad face. Well, it's a shift, though. It's a shift in American culture because Americans did used to value the melting pot. They did. That was an idea that was very celebrated in American culture for a long time. And a lot of people also recognized it wasn't perfect, but I think people instinctively recognized there was something beautiful about a society in which many different cultures could come together. And, this is the thing people don't... This is why it is such a kind of racist thing to boil everyone down into black, white, POC this, brown that. It's like, look, the reality is that when people were first immigrating to what is now the United States, there were Irish, there were Germans, there were Danes, Finns, Swedes, Spaniards. These were different cultures. These were not the same culture. Even within, the different cultures coming over from the British Isles. You had Scottish, you had Irish, you had Puritans, you had Protestants, you had Catholics. You had different cultures within even the same country. And a lot of times the reason they were coming here is because they were tired. They were tired of being stifled by, the aristocracy and the elites who were telling them you had to have this religion or you had to have this belief. They were tired of it. They wanted a society where they were free of that. And they came here, and a lot of times they were at odds with each other. Just because people came from the same continent did not mean they liked each other. Irish did not like, did not necessarily like the Scottish. The English did not necessarily like the Germans. There was a lot of, there were a lot of French. A lot of what is now the modern Americas were French immigrants who were loyal to France. Vive la France. Over time, those different cultures began to interconnect and mingle with each other. And over time, that was the melting pot developed. And then, with the fall of slavery, the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, the melting pot melted even more cultures together. And eventually, the idea of, we're not a culture of one, that is to say, our culture is that we are a whole made of many, and that we all agree to one ideal. We agree to this one ideal of liberty, and liberty for all. Liberty and justice for all, meaning for all. Meaning all lives matter is another way to put that. You can't say that. It's like, well, no, you can't anymore because we've moved away from that way of looking at the world. We've moved away from the goal of everybody being part of a society and ignoring color, and we've decided to regress. We have decided to become totally reactionary, and now we are retreating back to the old days of tribalism. And it's sad. It is very sad. Starfury says, as someone who lives in a melting pot, it's not all that it's cracked up to be, and I'm speaking as someone whose parents are both foreigners who came to the UK for a better life. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. We humans are not, well, look, we're tribalistic by nature. It's how we are. And I think that we have it in us to aspire to something better, but that, we cannot just give in to the temptation to demonize our neighbor if we think we want to achieve that. And so what I despise so much about the woke is not just that that's what they do. It's not just that they're so tribalistic and bigoted in how they go about everything. It's that they also feel entitled to be. It's their entitlement about it that's so frustrating, because they seem to think that just because they're nice to someone when they order their latte, they are entitled to be absolute little tyrants to all of their neighbors. And you aren't wearing your mask. It's like, they are just absolute little dictators of their fellow citizens. And they seem to think that because they, the right is on their side, that they're entitled to be that way. And it's like, well, you're not going to build any kind of multicultural society acting that way, because not everybody agrees with you. And, I lived in California. I grew up in California. I lived in California for many years. And it's funny. You get used to it. You just get used to how arrogant leftists are in California. They are so arrogant. They are so snotty. You can't even believe it. And then you move to somewhere where there's a mix. There's some leftists, there's some people on the right, and they all kind of mix together. It's a different vibe. It's just a totally different vibe. And you get people not making assumptions about you. And it's amazing how refreshing that is, because it's like they're just so supremely smug. I had a guy. I in my job, I occasionally interact with the clientele, and a customer asked me if Monday was a holiday for me. He said, "Are you celebrating are you off for the holiday?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't keep up with holidays much unless it's a big one. I don't really know. But yeah, what holiday is it? Oh, it's Juneteenth." And I'm like, oh, well, we don't really do company holidays here, so no, it's not one of our company. But the point is, it's like, if it were just a question, that would be one thing, but I know that it's not, because it's that snotty little undertone of like, well, you do celebrate it, don't you? Well, don't you? And it's like, fuck off. Like, I don't care. Just because, look, when everyone goes around wishing each other a happy Independence Day, I will be happy to wish you a happy Juneteenth in return. Whatever you want. And are we allowed to celebrate Columbus Day? Could I ask the same snotty, smug question of him on Columbus Day? I probably could. Do you celebrate Columbus Day? No, I don't celebrate colonizers. Well, fine. If the idea were that we were entitled to have our separate opinions and never the twain shall meet, that's fine with me, but that's not the agreement they want. So, rant over. Starfury says, Guardians mid at best, 4.5. That's slightly below mid, Starfury. Slightly below mid. And I would give it a 3. I would give Guardians a 3. 3 bars on the epaulets for the captain out of 10. What else must we discuss, my dear friends? We have gone a while, and so probably poor Shazam. Boo Man Blue says, poor Shazam. I want to I probably want to just touch on a couple of. Do I want to talk about Rise of the Beast spoilers? What is there to spoil in Rise of the Beast anyway? Okay, so I was watching in the theater. Right, there's a couple of good previews, and we got to see the Oppenheimer trailer before The Flash, and we got to see the Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning trailer before The Flash. And it struck me that I have more enjoyment and entertainment watching those trailers over and over again in the theater than the actual movies. And so, with a family member, I am rewatching the Mission Impossible series in order to prepare for the next Mission Impossible film, Dead Reckoning, which I am very excited about. Now, I watched Mission Impossible 3 again, and then I watched Mission Impossible 4, so Ghost Protocol. And it was mostly for the benefit of my family member to like kind of bring them up to speed so that they're prepared for Dead Reckoning, and also because I just enjoy watching those movies. And I have to say, something kind of hit me as I'm watching them. I noticed something. I've mentioned this before about Mission Impossible Fallout and the Ethan Hunt character, that I like how the Ethan Hunt character, as constructed by Tom Cruise, he is a heroic character, like a true hero. He saves the lives of his people. He loves his people. He cares about them. He saves his wife from danger in the third one. He protects the world out of a desire to do good because it's the right thing to do. There's a scene in Mission Impossible Fallout. It's one of my favorite in the whole series, frankly. There's a moment after they escape from... So they're in Mission Impossible Fallout. There's this whole sequence where Ethan Hunt and his team are pretending to be mercenaries working for the bad guy so that they can figure out the bad guy's evil plan. And in the course of pretending to be the bad guys, of course, they have to pull off a heist in which it would just be much easier for them to kill all of the civilians. But he finds a way to like avoid killing the civilians while still appearing to be working for the bad guys, which is all fine. But then the cops pursue him through Paris because they think he's a bad guy, and he escapes the cops. Well, there's a scene, which is a great action sequence, by the way. After he escapes the cops and he's reunited with his crew in the streets of Paris, something goes wrong, and an innocent cop just happens to stumble upon him and his crew. And she pulls her gun and she's aiming it at him, right? And he's immediately in trouble here because he obviously doesn't want to kill her, but he obviously can't allow her to take him into custody. So he starts slowly approaching her and he's like, just stay calm. He's speaking in French. He's like, listen, I'm not your enemy. And I forget exactly how the dialogue goes, but he's trying to like talk her down. Suddenly, the real bad guys, their crew shows up, like 5 of them. And I'm just going to narrate you this whole scene, indulge me. These 5, it's to make a bigger point. These 5 bad guys show up and they see the cop and they realize, oh, this is bad. And they're like, well, we got to take out the cop. Ethan, by the way, this is all done without dialogue. It's brilliant. This is all done through acting and subtext. Ethan Hunt sees that they see that they're going to have to kill her. He knows that the next thing that's going to happen is this cop is going to die. And his choice is either to let them do it. Well, I guess that's his choice. Let them do it, or risk getting taken into custody, whatever. What I love about it, he draws his gun, he shoots all 5 bad guys instantly, takes them out. And they manage to shoot the cop and wound her in the leg, and then he goes over and radios for help to get her help, and he says, I'm sorry. Anyway, my point is, what I love about it, he just freaking takes out 5 bad guys, and it could torpedo the whole mission. It could tank his whole mission because it could blow his cover, but he does it anyway to save the life of one innocent cop. That is the character that Ethan Hunt is in this series. Now, that was more recent in my memory, but now I had the occasion to go back and watch Mission Impossible 3 and Mission Impossible 4. He's like that throughout the whole series. There's a character in Mission Impossible 4 who is this informant that was feeding him information on, the bad guys, the Serbian bad guys, and he's in prison, and his team, Ethan Hunt, is in prison. His team is breaking him out of prison, but he decides to take a detour and rescue his informant as well, because he knows his informant will be killed if he doesn't save him. So he further endangers himself and potentially the mission in order to save this guy who was doing him a solid and would die if he left him behind. And he's basically just a kind of mid-level toady for the mafia, but because he was giving Ethan Hunt help, he feels indebted to him. And this has a payoff later in the film as well. In the third one, it's just a classic story of he has to save his wife from danger. It's beautiful. Like, they just allow him to have that. And don't worry, she has a great scene where he's unconscious and she has to shoot a few bad guys, and he teaches her how to use a gun. It's freaking awesome. And I'm thinking, you just never see this in heroic characters anymore. You never see this, that they have this ethic. They have this moral character. They have to protect civilians. They have to minimize danger to... Compare that to Transformers Rise of the Beast, right? You have Mirage, the Transformer, who is leading the main character, Noah, on a high-speed chase with cops in tow. And what does he do? He deliberately gets cops killed by having them, run into barriers, get taken outside, T-boned by a truck. It's not even just that the cop accidentally gets stuck in it. It's literally Mirage slams on the brakes so that the cop will have to slam on the brakes in the middle of an intersection, which allows the cop to get T-boned by a big dump truck. And I'm thinking, compare the ethics of these two moralities, right? It's like the morality of a typical modern Hollywood movie like Rise of the Beast compared to the Mission Impossible series, in which Ethan Hunt will he will kill 5 bad guys just at the drop of a hat and risk blowing the whole mission to save the life of one cop. He will go to the ends of the earth to save his wife and make sure that the weapon does not fall in the hands of the bad guy, and make sure that he brings his whole team home safe and sound. It's freaking great. It's freaking great. I love this character, Ethan Hunt. I love the Mission Impossible series. Every single one of them has a happy ending. Every single one. I even forgot how much they do this. Like, in the film, it will get dark. It will get grim. Bad things will happen to good people. But at the end of the movie, him and his team are together having a drink, laughing and having a good time, and they're ready for the next mission. I freaking love that. I love it. Now, Dead Reckoning looks pretty dark. I don't know. I kind of get the feeling, but of course I get this feeling every time with these movies. Like, this one could be the one where things really go bad. But, I just have faith. I have faith that their heart is always in the right place with these films. And so I'm very excited about it. So I just wanted, after I've gone through the best and worst 2023 so far, the hideous morality of Peter Pan and Wendy, and just the just garbage of Quantumania, the weird falling baby scene in The Flash, and he puts... how can I even top the image of The Flash taking a fallen baby, putting the baby in a microwave? It's not attached to a wall. To be fair, it's not powered, so fine, but he puts the baby in the microwave to protect the baby from fire. And it's like, this is meant to be somehow clever and charming. And I'm like, this is one of the most horrifying images I've ever seen. I can't, for so many reasons, quite frankly. It's like, the only saving grace is that the babies look so bizarre and fake that probably saves it. That probably makes it less than the worst thing you've ever seen. That's like, and that's probably the only thing that saves it. You just compare that with Mission Impossible. So what was I saying about earlier? When I went to the theater, my normie companion said this movie makes me uneasy. It makes me uncomfortable. It unsettles me. It makes me feel anxiety. And I think the difference when we're watching a Mission Impossible movie is it makes you feel tension because of the suspense and the action, but at the end of the movie, you feel lighter. And that is the difference. That is the difference between good storytelling and bad storytelling. So, the brilliant Mission Impossible series continues. And I'm here for it. And I hope, by the way, we can actually get back some good superhero films as well. So, all right, my dear sailors and starnauts. Well, happy Father's Day. Happy Juneteenth. You do celebrate it, right? You do celebrate it, right? And thanks for chilling with me of a Sunday evening. I am Captain Garrett of the channel Swords and Starships. And please do hit that like and subscribe button. Help me grow the channel. It is sort of growing. I got more work to do on it. I'm working on it. I am working on it. And In any case, thank you for joining me for the show. That is the Captain's Cast number. What are we up to? We're up to number 16, aren't we? That is number 16, my friends. We are going to be at 50 in no time. Yes. Yes, indeed. Fu Man Blue says, any SG1... You're just trying to put me into overtime now is what you're trying to do. I know. I'm wise to your... Okay, SG1 news. No, I'm sorry. No SG1 news. I did finish the Blue Crystal episode. It was pretty good. Not bad. That was a good little sci-fi story, self-contained. Yeah, that was all right. I like that. Where I'm at is like I am working on my Iron Age project, and I had so much work to do the last couple of weeks that I just didn't have time for it. But I think I actually have more time for it this week. So I will work on having more SG1 news for you next week. That is my pledge. That is my promise and my pledge to imitate FDR. So, thank you for joining the Captain's Cast live on the Swords and Starships Channel every Sunday. And until next time, I will see you, my dear sailors and star nuts, out there. Outro.